All right, so today's webinar is, I think, probably one of the more important webinars you'll ever attend. Honestly, that important. The reason is most people, like when they're, writing their resumes, are actually, without knowing it, are doing like pretty profound harm to their opportunities in the market. Almost everyone. So when I review resumes of people, I will typically suggest changes to the resume. Not all candidates are making those changes, and because they don't make them, they don't get interviews. Whereas the people that do make those changes do get interviews. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. This, again, is a very important webinar because you're going to learn about types of changes you need to make and the mistakes other people make. And if you do make these changes, it's going to pretty massively increase the number of interviews you get. And when I say massively increase the number of interviews, I mean by like multiple times, because you're going to be in a position where you're creating a resume that works, and you're going to understand the rules of what works when people put together resumes. So again, an extremely important webinar. There are certain rules that you need to follow in order to get more interviews with your resume. So this is, a webinar that, typically, like when I do a resume webinar, people think they already know how to do a resume, and like this may not be an important one, but you're in for a real treat because you're going to learn about what actually gets people interviews, and other people don't. So again, a very important webinar. So, if you're not getting interviews or as many as you like, it's usually for a reason. It's because of your resume. And all of this stuff can be fixed. Now, there's certain things, of course, that can't be fixed, but there's a lot of things that can be fixed. And when law firms choose who they're going to interview or make hiring decisions, it's almost always based on what your resume communicates about your qualifications, your focus, and your specific for a specific opening. When I review resumes, it's literally no more than 20 to 30 seconds, and often less than that, because there's certain things that I'm looking for that are exactly what law firms look for. So if I can see someone that has what law firms are looking for, then I'm able to very quickly, judge that they're a fit for certain openings and for certain firms, and good for me to work with. Whereas if they don't have those things, they're not going to be marketable. And I just want to say at the outset that what I'm talking about with your resume today has nothing to do with where you went to law school, almost nothing. It has nothing to do with how well you did in law school. It has nothing to do with the prestige level of the firm that you're applying to. And it usually has nothing to do with the geographic area you're interested in. So the rules I'm going to talk about apply to all of these. And if you do that, then you're much more likely to get interviews. And what I'm going to talk about today, I'm not going to go into detail about all the things you can do, but I'm going to talk about 5 rules, which for the most part will fix 95% of all resumes. And I am confident that when you listen to this webinar, I am going to tell you about things that you don't know. Almost all of these are going to be things you don't know and things that you're doing wrong. So again, this very important webinar, and the stuff that I'm covering with you is based on 25 years of experience running a major legal recruiting firm with over 150 employees. I mean, and insights into this that I have to make in order for me to make money for supporting this company, which means I have 150 people that I need to pay. And almost the majority of those people work on my team. So I give them very, very specific instructions about what to do, and have spent tens of millions of dollars developing a database that looks for this stuff and then finds jobs for people that have this stuff. So if you have these things that I'm talking about, and if you fix your resume, then you're going to get more interviews. And it even applies to your seniority level. If you think you're too old, it also even applies to your practice setting. If you think you're not going to get a job because you're coming from the government or coming from in-house or public interest, it applies to all that stuff. If you make the changes I'm going to talk about today, you're going to position yourself as the clear choice for the jobs you want. I will try to do, this is a live webinar, so I will cover as many questions as you have at the end of the webinar. I would recommend that you take notes because this is that important. And I would also recommend that you ask a lot of questions if you can think of things during the webinar that apply to you. And if you don't have things that apply to you, when I say you, I mean your resume, then you can ask questions about other things if you think you understand all of this. So the first thing is your chances of being interviewed, but dramatically depend on whether or not you seem qualified for the job. So 90% of all attorneys do the most insane thing on their resume. This one thing, if you fix it, is going to dramatically improve the number of interviews you get alone. I'm going to talk about it in more detail with more slides, but in general, law firms hire for jobs in a certain practice area. They are not concerned whether you did 5 different things at your current law firm, or 5 different things at your previous law firm, or 5 different things as an in-house counsel, or 5 different things as a public interest or government attorney. They do not like that. Clients of law firms hire people that are specialists in a given practice area. Otherwise, there would be no point of hiring an outside attorney. They could hire an in-house attorney to do 15 different things, or that their clients aren't going to be interested for the most part because they're going to a law firm with their expertise in something. It could be insurance defense, it could be corporate M&A at the larger firms. It might even be M&A for tech companies, that are merging with other tech companies. I mean, law firms are interviewing you for specific roles. They're not interviewing you for 5 different things, and they're not going to interview you if your interest is in switching practice areas, which basically means you're going to be an entry-level attorney. That they don't need entry level. They can hire summer associates, or they can hire, they can train people out of law school that don't have a bunch of other training. So they're hiring you for a job. If you go to job sites, all you're going to see are jobs in specific practice areas. You may see one that talks about trademark litigation and intellectual property litigation, 2 things, but in general, they're going to hire you just for a certain practice area. They do not care that you have other experience. So if you decide you want to put your resume and talk about all these different things at your different jobs, they are not impressed. That's exactly the opposite of what they want. They want to see that you were you were one practice area, corporate M&A is an example, at your current firm, you did that for some time, and at your previous firm. If you didn't do it at your previous firm, put in a line or 2 about how you did some M&A and don't say anything else. Like, they're going to look at your resume and they're going to think, does this resume have the scent? Meaning, if I read this resume, does everything that I read point towards corporate M&A? They are not concerned. If you were in the public interest law journal in law school, they do not like that. They do like it if you're in the corporate business journal, or you're part of the corporate business club. They do not care if you were a member of the diversity group, the Muslim Students Association or whatever. That is not interesting to them. All that does is pin you in a certain, race, which they're not interested. I mean, you think they are, but most of them are only interested in things related to your experience. That's it. Things that are relevant to what you do now. They do not care. You are not impressing anyone by saying something that has nothing to do with your practice area. If you decide you want to put down the Civil Liberties Union, which basically means you're going to, or Civil Liberties Union, which basically means you're looking for law firms at that and making an issue out of whether or not they have civil liberties practices, or you're going to get there and decide that the associates don't have enough civil liberties. Like, that is not impressive to them. None of this stuff that has nothing to do with your practice area is impressive. If you were a real estate agent prior to going to law school, or if you worked at a deli, they are not concerned about that. They only want to see things related to your practice area. Meaning, if you worked at a real estate agency, probably not a good idea to put that on your resume. None of this stuff. If you were a summer associate doing litigation and you want to be a corporate attorney, all you should say is, I was a summer associate of this employer. You do not want people to view your resume and get the sense that you're interested or doing something else other than your practice area. you make this one change, it's going to make a massive difference to your resume because people do not want to think that you're interested in something else. Law firms get resumes of people all the time, for example, that worked in entertainment company before going to law school. Then they went to law school and they worked at or they were on the Entertainment Law Journal and they put that down. And then maybe they put down they got the highest grade in entertainment law. And then they want to be a corporate attorney. No, like people that if you have that on your resume, people are going to think you want to be an entertainment attorney. What are you doing applying to our law firm for a corporate job? No, absolutely not, because you will leave the second you get an entertainment law job. And they know that. So you're not helping yourself. Dumb, dumb, dumb. I'm sorry to be so direct about this, but you're doing profound damage to your prospects. Like, why would you list like a bunch of things related to other associations, whether it's religious or racial or practice areas that have nothing to do with the practice area you want to be into on your law school resume? They're not going to do, on your law school experience, or even your experience prior to going to law school, or even your experience after going to law school. Say you were in-house counsel. That's it. Say you were, whatever. You don't have to talk about a lot of stuff that has other things, because law firms are only hiring people to do practice areas on behalf of clients. Clients expect experts in a practice area. They don't want people that are doing 5 different things. Any law firm of a decent size is going to hire people with expertise in a certain practice area. That's it. Sometimes they won't, but why would you, if you were a law firm with opening in personal injury law, why the heck would you hire a corporate attorney? Clients aren't going to like that. The law firm's not going to like that. If you were a real estate attorney at your last job and now you want to be a corporate attorney, clients aren't going to like that. The law firm's not going to like that. So you're just putting yourself into competition with other people that have that expertise. And other people that have that expertise are going to be hired, not you. Okay. So not you. You might get an interview if the law firm just can't find people and doesn't pay anything, but you'd have to be insane to do this. And this is what everyone does. I don't get it. And I look at 100 resumes a day and 85 people are doing this. They think it's a big deal that they were part of the whatever, Trusts and Estates Law Society and law school, and now they want to be a litigator. No, absolutely not. Your resume, you're not going to get hired unless your resume presents you with someone interested in the law firm's job and someone that has a focus, like their career is a focus in this. If you want to be a corporate attorney, put down you got the highest grades in corporate law. They remember the corporate law journal. Put down that your last experience was just an associate. If you did litigation, you don't want to draw people's attention. Your resume needs to scream that you're the person for the specific job description and practice area you're applying to. You need to read every job you're applying to and modify your resume as appropriate. That's what you need to do. You cannot just blanketly send 20 resumes to 20 jobs that are different or 20 jobs that are in your practice area and expect to get an interview if your resume doesn't show any focus. If you have a focus in law school, if you have a focus in your last positions, even if you did 3 or 4 different things in your last position, if there was one thing that was focused on that practice area, that's what you need to talk about. You don't need to talk about anything else because law firms are not going to be impressed that you are listing all these different things you did in your last job. They would have to be insane to do that because that's what their clients want. All they're going to do is look at your resume and say, this person has a focus on a practice area. I don't give a damn if you were like last in your law school class. If you have a focus in your resume on something, then I will represent you. I would be dumb not to, because that's who law firms hiring. Your resume, when you're applying to jobs, should not be cluttered with all sorts of irrelevant work experience and associations and activities. And no, absolutely not. They don't want to see it. That has nothing to do with their opening. If they see a resume, your last 3 years of experience or 2 years or 1 year in a certain practice area, and your others weren't, then don't talk about that other practice area. This is what you have to do, because law firms, all they're doing is they're looking at a resume and they're saying, does this person look like a good fit? for the job that we have. Does this person have that experience? And if they get all confused with different experience on your resume or different jobs on your resume or different interests, like you want to be part of you're a hardcore member of the Republican Party or something that's detracting from that, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like it if you are involved in one political party or another, unless that law firm is composed of people like that, which, first of all, is not going to happen, but a lot of the time. But if it does happen, they're going to get rid of you. They're not going to look at you. And again, you may be proud of all these practice areas you did, but law firms won't hire you. Why would they? They'd have to be crazy because that's what their clients want. Clients do not want something with a bunch of varied experience. Now, sometimes they may, at a small law firm, doesn't have any clients or decent clients, but many times that law firm can't afford to pay you anyway. So if you want to get higher paying jobs, you need to have a focus. So you can't make your resume, if you want to do environmental litigation, talk about other stuff. If you worked in law school doing some environmental type stuff, that says, hey, this person is interested in environmental work and our other people aren't. And everything about this candidate's law school experience, their prior to law school experience is about the environment. We want to show someone committed to that. I place healthcare attorneys all the time, like consistently, that were doing something related to healthcare prior to law school. They might have been a nurse. They don't care. The law firm sees you're interested in healthcare and you're bringing a perspective of someone that's interested in healthcare, not someone that worked in, as a financial analyst. You don't need to even say what you did prior to law school on your resume. No one cares. But if you want to and it's related to that, then you should. So you have to have a focus on a practice area. And if your legal experience doesn't match the job opening, what they're gonna talk about in the job, they're gonna say, we're looking for someone focused on this practice area. Our job is for a healthcare litigator. That's the job. They're not interested in someone that does something else. Would you be? Would you be interested in someone that was applying to be a nanny in your home, whose current experience was mowing lawns, working as a receptionist in a finance company, and then also was experienced in washing windows, and then had a little bit of experience doing nanny work? No, what the hell? Like, you wouldn't be interested in that. You wouldn't be interested in a doctor that, if you had some life-threatening disease like cancer, you wouldn't be interested in a doctor that was also being a doctor and their previous experience was doing something related to, orthopedic surgery, and was a general practitioner and all these different things. You would want someone that was an expert in cancer. And if you had throat cancer, you would want someone interested in throat cancer doctor. You wouldn't care, and you wouldn't want to hire someone to represent you if you had or to help you if you had a life-threatening disease. Clients don't want that in law firms either. You can't stuff your resume in different interests. You can't stuff your resume in different jobs. Not too long ago, I worked with a woman that did plaintiffs' employment and labor litigation. She wanted to do employment and labor defense, completely different fact pattern. Someone suing somebody for employment violations. The other person's suspending companies and corporations. She went to Columbia Law School. She was at the top of her class. No one gave a hell. Like, no one gave an S. It's like, or gave an F. No, she didn't get any interviews. So they didn't care. They wanted someone that was a plaintiff's attorney. Why wouldn't they hire someone with a plaintiff's attorney? That experience is relevant. They don't care. They didn't care that someone went to a local law school and didn't do well. It just doesn't look good. They hire people they know can do the job. Even low-paying plaintiffs, low-paying employment firms. If you're applying a position doing construction litigation, you need to tone down and tear down your resume if it discusses other types of practice areas. If you aren't doing that in your existing job, they're not going to hire you. So you need to apply to jobs that are focused on a practice area. Now, you may do construction litigation, you may do commercial litigation, you may do all these different types of things. But if you want to do commercial litigation, then your resume should be focused on commercial litigation when you're applying to commercial litigation openings. If you want to do labor and employment litigation, then your resume needs to be focused on that. Now, I want to be very clear about previous jobs. So if you have a previous job that has nothing to do with your current practice here at all, you just say, I was in-house counsel, I was, a staff attorney or whatever. Or actually, you would say attorney. You wouldn't talk about staff attorney because staff attorney is a different job than an associate. You would just say I was an attorney. But if you were in, whatever, but you just say you're an associate or I was an attorney or whatever, but you don't people do not want to read your resume and think about another practice area other than the one you're doing now. The resume needs to have a scent that is completely based on one practice area. I'll tell you just another quick story. I mean, I have a lot of these stories. Not too long ago, I was representing a trust and estates attorney. He had gone to an unaccredited law school in California, which means his law school experience was 100% online. His law school was so poorly ranked that it didn't have ABA qualification. It wasn't qualified for ABA approval. So it wasn't a good law school. It just wasn't. So he wanted to be a trust and estates attorney. His last job for the past year, despite the fact that he had 15 years of experience, was all about trust and estates law. And in his previous jobs, he'd done insurance defense, he'd done plaintiffs litigation, he'd done corporate. I told him to just say I was an associate there. That's it. I don't have to list anything because then people read his description of his trust and estates, and they weren't like set in 15 different directions by different practice areas in previous jobs. And so instead of getting hired for a job that required 1 year of experience, he got interviews at good-sized law firms that no one from an unaccredited law school should possibly get in interviews at. But he was the best candidate because he was focused and people hired him, multiple people. Like at the same time, I have people that were AmLaw 100 law firms not getting interviews because they decided to, stuff their resume with unrelated practice areas. Law firms want to hire specialists, just like you would want to hire a specialist if you had cancer, or maybe you dislocated a shoulder, no one could put it back. You'd want an orthopedic surgeon. You wouldn't want a general practitioner. And the hospital's smart enough and that they're not going to have they're not going to have a general practitioner work on you unless you're in an emergency room. They're not. So you need to remove information that has nothing to do with the job opening. So you look at the job opening and you make your resume about that. We do that. No one cares where you went to law school. No one cares about any other things. Now, you may not get interviews at AmLaw 100 law firms just because you're law school if you're trying to apply for firms, but you will probably get interviews at small law firms that are good. You will get interviews at, medium-sized law firms. And even if you were a solo practitioner, you will get interviews at small law firms. If that's your only experience, you will get interviews at small law firms and you will get interviews at large law firms. I had a woman recently. This is just another example. She went to a unaccredited law school too. And her only experience, this is her only experience, I want to be very clear, was being a corporate law attorney when she got out of law school, like soliciting companies for work. Being a corporate law attorney, she didn't have any law firm training, but her experience was all about corporate law. And it had to do with registering companies and doing administrative, like corporate work for law firms that didn't have any presence of a corporate attorney in Delaware. And she got lots of law firms all over the country to hire her on an hourly basis, like paying hundreds of dollars an hour when she had that expertise. And not only that, then she looked for a job and got a job as a corporate attorney at a law firm in Indiana, because she had corporate experience. So this is all important. And, and you just can't have all these irrelevant practice areas, all these irrelevant activities, social justice, divisive employment issues, like things about suing employers or standing up for people that are poor, whatever it is. You can have those interests. These sorts of people can change the world, but a law firm's not going to hire you for a specialist position if you have that, because they're going to think this person is interested in social justice. So if you do a job search and you're looking at job openings, you need to appear interested in what the law firm is doing, not your political agenda, not that you were part of the Trump campaign, not that you were part of the Biden campaign, not that you're a member of some organization that's suing companies and environmental violations when you want to be a commercial litigator. It's just insane. So if you want, you should be having articles and other information, which is good, related to your practice area, but you need to look like you're motivated by that and not something different. So don't do it. I saw an attorney not too long ago that was in New York City that had all this stuff about freeing Palestine. Wasn't getting any interviews. Good resume. But, that's not something that appeals to people that might be Jewish inside of a law firm in New York City. No one cared. No one cared that she had really good corporate experience. They didn't like that. So, she had all these organizations, things about Free Palestine. And no, I had one attorney that graduated at the top of his class from a top 5 law school. And he had multiple links on his last employer, in his associations in law school, in his current members of associations, in his previous jobs, talking about the fact that he was gay and had 20 references to it. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with someone being a homosexual. I'm not saying that that's a problem. But what I am saying is, you think law firms are interested in diversity? You better think hard about that. They were very interested in that at one point. Now they are not interested in diversity. They do not like people that try to get into law firms based on their diversity. They want people that are getting in there based on their qualifications. So this poor guy decided he was, had all these references. And despite the fact that he graduated from a top 5 law school, didn't get a single interview. Some people don't like members of diversity groups. And if they see that resume, they may just pass. And you won't know why, but I'm sorry. But, not all law firms are interested. There are some law firms that are very interested in it, but the majority aren't. So take your chances, man. You think that's important? Go right ahead. But you're not going to get someone to hire you. Most people just not going to get it. Why would you put that on your resume in a very, political, volatile environment about DEI? Why would you do that? No, you're going to hurt yourself. Why would you put the fact that you were a member of the Trump campaign when you're trying to get jobs in California or jobs in New York City where everyone is frickin' Democrat? Why? What the hell? No one's going to interview. No one's going to interview if you say you're the member of the Federalist Society either. No one's going to interview if you say you're a member of the Republican Club. They do not like that. So go right ahead and advertise you were a member of the Trump campaign and see what happens to you. Go right ahead. But you'd have to be frickin' nuts. And this is what people do. And they don't get interviews. They talk about all this diversity and all these different things. They lead with the fact that they were a member of the Muslim Student Society and expect that is really going to help them with New York firms, or they were a member of some diversity group and expect that that's really going to help them sticking out in their diversity. No, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be racist here. I'm not trying to be, not against diversity. I wrote a book about frickin' diversity in law firms. It was not well received. It was a very good book. I had a top nonfiction editor in the country, one of the best, edit it for me. I worked over a year on it. No one cared. No one was interested in sitting down and reading a book about law firm diversity because they didn't care. So if you think that book that was massively marketed to law firms is something that they're interested in, no, that they're not interested. They weren't reading it. No. So, I see resumes once a week of attorneys that spend time discussing pro bono work, that they've done this on their resume. I saw one resume of a guy that was a Harlan Fistone scholar in New York at trying to get a job there. He, lost his previous job and probably lost it because he was more interested in pro bono than corporate work. So he decided to put on his resume 4 or 5 lines about how he did pro bono work and represented immigrants and all this stuff when he was at a big firm in New York. And one line about the fact that he worked on some corporate matters. One line, nothing happened. That guy's career in New York City was frickin' over. No one has any interest in that, because why would you hire someone that's more interested in pro bono than practicing corporate law for a corporate job in New York City? like where it's very competitive, lots of corporate law attorneys with nothing but that on their resume are applying to job. Game over, like 100%. Like with big firms, with small firms, with firms in other cities, game over. And I just want to be very, very clear. His career is over until he fixes that. The resume of the guy with 20 references to different gay rights groups and everything, his career is over. So you do this. You want to do it? You go right ahead. Knock yourself out. But there's nothing wrong with that. Doing it on your free time if you want to get a job in New York City. But why would a firm hire someone more interested in pro bono work than practicing corporate law? Do you think that you're not competing with people that are focused? No. Social issues will detract how these clients view, how they view their client, the kind of work they do on behalf of clients. They will emphasize their interest in social issues more than the work that they do. Why do you think Trump is firing all these law firms that basically represented nothing but Democrats? He doesn't like that. So these law firms are risking, millions and millions of dollars, in some case, $100 million being associated with that. So, that's fine, but, that's not helping them at all. So no, you don't do that. You don't do that. I was a summer associate in a big New York law firm. They had a pro bono meeting where the firm was introducing people to their pro bono department. And there was a guy there that was head of the pro bono department that was sitting there with a bunch of other attorneys in the firm. And he decided that he needed to tell the summer associates that the law firm had some of the lowest pro bono hours in the city. So I saw this guy at the beginning of my 15-week or whatever it was summer associate job, and he had been there for 5 years or something, like right out of law school. Then I started seeing in the hallways and things people dressing him down, suddenly finding fault with his work after he'd been there for 5 years. And by the end of 10 weeks there, he was gone, like no longer there. I am almost 100% positive that they pushed him out for taking a stand on social issues within the firm and criticizing the firm. So if you're more interested in that kind of work, then the type of work you're being hired to do, this is going to be an issue with people hiring. It's going to be an issue anywhere you go. People want to hire people that are going to bill hours in their practice area, not be interested in other things. So, if people have stuff on their resume that implies that corporations are evil and maybe that they should unionize, it's not gonna work. Law firm management's not gonna like it. Hiring people are not gonna like it. Other associates that are interviewing, if they even get to interviewing you, are not gonna like it. Clients aren't not gonna like it if you have this kind of secret harboring of the evil of corporations who you are going to be representing if you're a commercial litigation attorney, whether or not they're on the side of big companies or two big companies fighting. You're not going to like these clients. I mean, it's crazy. So again, law firms interview people based on the set of your resume. Your experience and interest have to match the position. If they don't, they're going to hire someone that does. Law firm gets 50 job applications, 25 applications, 100 job applications for a job, they're going to pass you over. So if you look like you have an interest in something else, then you're not going to get a job. So I had one guy applying for a sports law position. He played football in college, and then he worked for the NFL one summer, and now he plays in a football club. And so that's all over his resume. He even wrote a law firm review article about football, and he got lots of jobs. That's good. But if you take the same resume and you make it stand out as a position as a tax law, you're not going to get far. So your resume needs to appeal to your audience. If it does that and you're focused on the job, it's going to get you interviews. You have to modify your resume to be all about that. And I talked to you about the sports law attorney, and so that's fine. And then just other things that are important. And by the way, if you're representing a client in a law firm, you go in and you make arguments, whether or not it's on a corporate transactional or real estate transactional document or in a litigation brief, you're going to make arguments that are relevant to that person's situation. And you're not going to talk about other things that are not relevant to representing that person. You don't go into a murder trial and talk about how the person, has, 5 separate convictions for other clients, you're not going to talk about it. You're going to try to get the opposing counsel not to mention it. This is what any murder attorney is going to do. This is what any attorney is going to do on behalf of their clients. So let's get this straight. When you're representing a client, you have to argue in a way that's favorable to them and de-emphasize things that aren't favorable. If a real estate, if you're doing like a contract for an employee, you're going to try to maybe get a non-compete agreement in there and all sorts of stuff that you're not going to bring in your own policy of being against, non-compete agreements. You're going to do whatever you can. Other things, so your resume contains a bunch of punctuation and typos or whatever, or the language isn't tight, then that just tells to the employer you're not going to be careful with your work. That's not good for their clients. That's not something that partners want to have to correct. So your resume needs to be error-free. People make mistakes, typos on their resumes all the time. When I do resume reviews, I open them up in Grammarly or even just Microsoft Word, and suddenly there's all these punctuation errors and tense errors and things. Those people don't get hired. You need to talk about, if your resume requires you to write well, if it's too wordy, it doesn't make succinct arguments, then they're going to conclude that you're not a good fit for the job. Litigators need to write very tight language. They do that because they need to make things easy to read for judges. They don't need a lot of theoretical arguments. They need to make briefs and things that are relevant to, that can fit into a certain page limit. So you have a lot of stuff on there, it's not going to look like you can fit into a page limit. So you need to use Grammarly. You need to use ChatGPT to make your descriptions proofread, but also more direct. You have to make direct arguments about why you're good at something. You don't need to make wordy arguments. You don't want to, things need to be direct because that's what clients need too. They need direct memos. They need to, they need things that are direct and they can understand. Same thing with discovery. If you ask an open-ended question in discovery, like you ask someone, all documents that apply to your employment of this person, they're gonna basically object and they're going to say this is overly broad, and then you'll have to go back and make a more focused argument. So you're wasting the client's money by trying to, by not getting the answers. You have to make direct requests. So you need to be appropriate for the job. Your resume needs to be focused for the job. You need to have stuff that's irrelevant to your ability to do work in the law firm the way they want it, and your interests need to be relevant to the job. You don't need to list other things that are, not interest, things that aren't related. Now you can list your interests are cooking Southern barbecue and, attending, certain fun events. I mean, concerts and things. You can list that. That gives people something to talk about, but nothing to do with your experience. It's got to be focused. So the other thing that's very important, and it's related to this to some extent, is you look like you can be managed. Why would you hire someone to be a nanny role that doesn't look like they can be managed? Why would you do that? You need someone that will follow your directions. That's what law firm partners need. That's what clients hiring an attorney expect from their employees. They employ that people at the law firms. They expect them to follow instructions and give the client what they need, and if they don't, then they're going to find another attorney, or if the attorney is very good, it can convince them the client needs something else, but they're not going to hire someone that's going to give them what they need, not give them what they need, managing them, maybe putting certain clauses in a contract or whatever, or taking their side in a certain way in litigation. If the attorney decides, if the client decides that they want something, then the lawyer needs to do it. That's how you get paid. Why would you not be managed? So if you don't look like you can be managed, you're not a good fit. And I'll tell you about being managed. I mean, all this pro bono stuff on your resume is not being managed. But what does being managed? It means that you're the type of person, if you want to work for someone else, okay? So if you want to work on your own, go ahead and be not manageable. If you want to be an entrepreneur, go ahead and not be manageable. But partners, management, and other people expect to follow rules, fall in line with what the firm needs, and do as they say. The same thing goes for partners. Partners are reviewed in law firms, in case you didn't know that. They're all reviewed. Now, some small law firms may not review them because they only want their business or whatever, but most law firms, partners need to be managed. Associates, even more so. The partner needs to give you something and think that you're going to be managed. You need to look like you respect people that are above you and make them feel important. So if you're an associate, the law firm partner is your client. Okay, let's be very clear about that. The law firm partner is your client. If you don't respect that client, the client's going to give work to other people. If you don't look like that client can manage you, again, the partner is your law firm client. You're not going to be manageable. If you look like you're a partner that jumps between law firms, you're not going to look like you're manageable. So partners, associates, anybody that's working for someone else, and if you're a partner working in a law firm, you're working for other partners and the management, anybody that looks like they're working for someone else needs to be manageable, and they need to look like they respect authority. Bouncing between firms, which I'll talk about in a minute. Having, not whatever, not looking like you're manageable, not looking like you want to work for other people is not going to help you. If it looks like you don't want to work for other people, even moderately, then a law firm is going to hire someone that does because they want to be respected. Law firm partners want to feel important when they give you work. Law firm management wants to feel important when they manage partners. They need to feel like, and I'll tell you, it's just amazing. Like I have partners with $30+ million in business. They all talk about what their law firm wants, what's important to their law firm, all these sorts of things. These are the ones that end up getting business as well, because that's what they do with their clients. They talk about what the client wants. So you need to act the part expected to you. You're expected, and as an attorney in a law firm, to report to your boss and others and act like an attorney representing a client. You would not go into a client meeting and tell them 15 things that are wrong and that you won't take their side in some litigation or something, or what they want in contracts or real estate documents. You would not do that because they're going to hire someone that does. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you hire a nanny that says she will cook the meals in the way you want? She will pick up your kids in the way you want. She says, oh, I like driving to pick up my kids in a tandem bicycle that seats two. No, like you're going to want someone that will drive a car and do things the way you want. And if you are expected to take sides of corporations in litigation or whatever, you need to look like that's what you do. You need to look like people who follow orders and procedures and expectations. Again, you may not want to do this. Then F you is what law firms are going to say, because good groups function when people follow instructions and work together for the common good. I was working at Quinn Emanuel, one of the top litigation, if not the top litigation firm in the United States, like very, very good commercial litigation firm. There was a guy in my class that thought it was cool to talk to reporters about cases he was working on. He felt like that was something he should do. And he did that after 3 months in the law firm, after having graduated from Harvard Law School, being on law review, and just having this rock star resume where he'd been a litigator, summer associate, another great firm. And he lost his job within 3 months and then spent over a year looking for a new one. And the only one he got was in the government. So groups cannot function if people are not working together. All law firms, let's be very clear. I just want you to understand, working in a law firm, all law firms will push people out that don't follow instructions. Partners don't like it. It makes them feel bad to have to convince somebody of something, or if they're not following instructions, they're not going to hire them, because law firms need people to follow instructions. It's like an army. If someone that's in an army, and that's what you are, is you're a soldier in a law firm. If you think you can be a general and dictate things to a partner about what needs to be done and not support the partner, they're going to fire you. I had a guy that was graduated from the University of Chicago Law School. One of his first assignments when he was there for a couple months was working up all these memos and things about some matter for a partner that was young, very excited that he had brought in this client willing to spend a lot of money and convince them. And he went to the partner after 4 or 5 hours of working on this, and he said, this work is unnecessary. You don't need to do it because I found a solution, and the partner got mad, and the partner gave the work to someone else. And then he proceeded to talk to other associates in the firm about how this was wrong. And then he decided he was going to mention it to other partners in the firm and decide that this was wrong. He lost his job. Okay. So, top graduate of a top 3 law school, lost his job, couldn't find another one, ended up having to open his own practice, not doing corporate law, but doing criminal defense for drunk drivers. Okay. So this is what the fuck happens. I'm sorry to swear. This is what happens. So don't want to follow instructions, don't want to work for the common good, whether it's billing clients lots of money that it might not be completely necessary, or whatever that the firm requires. You need to do it for the common good. And if you don't, they're going to get rid of you. You may have all sorts of personal goals. You may think, you're working for the, client's goals, but law firms are like organisms. They will push out things that are cancerous. And what is cancerous and what is a tumor are people that aren't following things for the organization's good. And what do tumors do? They spread. So if you have some people in the law firm that are going in, the associates are closing the door and talking to other associates, and they know that the person you're talking to is someone that's adverse to working hard in the law firm or whatever the hell it is, not on their team and looking for other jobs, they're going to associate you with that person and they are going to push you out. This is what the law firms do. They push that person out like a freaking cancer. And so law firms are always pushing people out consistently that don't support the group. They will push them out like cancer, and they do it. Every law firm does it. This is why people lose their jobs. This is why people can't get jobs. The law firms push them out like a cancer, and they will. Every law firm in the country will push people out that are associated with not, supporting the group. They will do it if they pick it up in interviews, and if you don't care what others think of them or what the business thinks of you, that you don't look like you're likely to respect authority and procedures and the job or the coworkers, they will push you out. If you leave a law firm to decide to be an entrepreneur, starting some kind of tech business or something, and it doesn't work out, why would they hire you? No, that they want people that want to work in law firms, that respect the law firm culture and the way things work and the way business works there. And they will push out and not hire people that don't. You think it's cool that you're an entrepreneur? Law firm doesn't. That shows that you don't respect working for the organization. You are more interested in doing something else. Won't hire you. Law firms cannot manage everyone, just like society pushes cancers into prison or makes them, do things wrong, just as law firms or state bars will push people out of the state bar if they do something wrong that's bad enough or censor them. So, people are put in prison for not supporting the group. And the group in any society, and every town and village and place in the frickin' country will manage criminals and put them in jail at the state level or the federal level if they don't support society. And law firms are the frickin' same way. They will put people and cast them out if they're not following instructions and doing what the employer wants and needs. So you're a cook and you won't follow instructions to make meals the way that the restaurant requires, they will kick you out. You will not go to a restaurant if the cook doesn't make the things in the way you require. Maybe you think that scrambled eggs are better for people than whatever it's called, when you stir up eggs. They're not going to like that. So you're not going to like that if you go to a restaurant. The manager needs to do a certain role. Everybody in a restaurant needs to follow authority. Why do you think that you don't need to follow authority working in a law firm? What if a waiter decided that they didn't need to be waiting all the time and like to sit down with customers and socialize instead of do their job? They wouldn't hire them. Providing menus to people. If a waiter didn't think they could do that and could recite it all to people and thought that was better than allowing people to study a menu, they won't like that. You wouldn't like that if a waiter yelled at customers or decided that they were going to side with all the other waiters to get a wage increase. The company or the restaurant's going to push them out and hire waiters that are happy. Same thing with the law firm. If you are the only associate negotiating for more, for more money, they're not going to like that. You don't fit in, all this stuff. So a law firm needs to look like you can play the game and be managed, and they're not going to hire people that don't look like they can play the game. You are proud that you're working 100% remotely and put that on your resume. Well, a law firm that wants to hire people to work in an office is going to interview you. Probably not interview if you're working all remote, but maybe they have to. But most of the time, they want people that are willing to come into the office. People that are siding with working remotely and want to do that, that person is not manageable. They're going to want someone that will work in the office. You do not go into interviews and say that you want to work remotely. You need to figure out what the firm should say. I'll do whatever you want. I work for you. Certain people can be managed and others can't. And if you look like you can't be managed, you invite chaos. It's bad for clients. It's bad for the law firm to have other people there that have people that can't be managed because they infect everyone. It invites chaos. Like if a law firm has someone that's infecting everyone or wants something different than all the other employees, they can't be managed. I have a company right now that I've got one employee demanding, and she's in a similar role as other people doing the same work. She's demanding a wage increase to continue work. Well, unfortunately, I have accountants that socialize with all the employees there, or people in, accounting type roles. And if I were to do that, then everybody would want a raise. So why would I decide that I'm going to pay 20 different people $5 more per hour and all of a sudden increasing one person's wage by $5 an hour means that I'm at risk of having, 20 other people get $5 an hour more and costing myself $100 an hour more, or $800 a day, or $4,000 a week, or $208,000 a year. I would not do that. Why would I give one person a raise when it's going to cost me $208,000 a year? Won't do it. So that's it. And, law firms want to hire people that will service their clients in the way the client wants. Partners want employees that are going to do things as requested. And again, people that are look like they're making demands on an employer for special treatment and limited hours. Like that's another one. Like people say, oh, this is great, but I only want to work 1,500 hours a year. That's my boundary. Like, why would a law firm do that? Why would a law firm even say they want to hire someone that talks about after they've interviewed for the job that they only want to work 1,500 hours a year? They say that in the interview. Why would you do that if you're a law firm? When matters come in, and when they come in, you need someone to do the work who's going to fall in line and do whatever they want and work extra hours if they need to. If you think that it's really smart to say you want limited hours or talk about that, or get an interview based on that, or even negotiate an offer based on that. No, they're not going to like that. If you think you need special treatment by the employer, then they're not going to hire you. You wouldn't either. Why would you hire a nanny that says you can only work 3 days a week when you need someone that needs to work 5 days a week, or they could only work from 12 in the afternoon to 4 in the afternoon when you need someone full time? Why would you do that? You have work to do. You have things that need to be done. Your profitability as a law firm is dependent on people working lots of hours. So you do that, you can do that, but it's not going to get you hired. If you have a lot of part-time positions, and those are things like independent contractor. And I'm sorry to bring up this stuff because I know a lot of people are contract attorneys, independent contractors, consultant for law firms, and are working part-time or whatever on an hourly basis in law firms. That's a job where you can limit your hours, where you're frankly not getting as good of experience as associates and things. And, and these experience are assigned to employers. You might be a management challenge. You want flexibility. You want to be a staff attorney and only have to work a limited number of years. And so you don't want the accountability that someone working crazy hours wants, or you have a history of being an independent contractor. You say you were an attorney there. You don't have to say I was a staff attorney or contract attorney. You say I'm an attorney, whatever. But they're not going to hire you if you look like someone that has jobs that are not related to billing a lot of hours and a lot of responsibility. A lot of times, your resume, you need to emphasize what you've done for employers and not yourself. So, you need to talk with pride about what you've done for past employers. You need to recite things like you had the most hours. The best attorneys that get transactional jobs or litigation jobs are very excited about this. Like they will list matters of significant litigation, maybe on a second page of their resume. They will list all the corporate transactions or real estate transactions they've done because they are very proud of what they've done for employers and clients. If you do that and no one else does, you're likely to get an interview and likely to get hired because you are enthusiastic about your practice area, enthusiastic, about doing work for the law firm and clients. If there's not a lot of stability at one employer, meaning, you've been there for a long time, for example, you've been there for 10 years, you've been there for 5 years, you've been there for 3 years, that's stability. That means you can follow instructions because every law firm knows that if you've had a series of 1 year jobs and one for 6 months, that you're not manageable. Maybe you left the job after 6 months. I talked to one woman the other day. She worked at her first job for 6 months, and then she decided she didn't like the practice area. Then she went into somehow, I don't know how it happened, but she got a job in another practice area in a law firm. It was privacy law. She went and got all these certifications and other things in privacy law while she was employed in another practice area in a law firm. And she decided that she'd been there for 6 months and she was doing only healthcare privacy law, or mainly 50% or 30% of her practice was healthcare privacy law. And she wanted to do healthcare law, or she wanted to do privacy law for other people that are doing different types of privacy law and not just one. So that's a game changer, game killer. She's not going to get interviewed. If she does get interviewed because there's no employment stability, somehow by accident, they're not going to hire her. They're going to want someone that has employment stability. If you've been unemployed for long periods of time, you may say, again, I'm not trying to be critical here. I took 2 years off. I had a guy yesterday. I took 2 years off because I got married and I wanted to plan my wedding. This is a guy. And I wanted to plan my wedding. And then I wanted to travel the world with my new wife, for 6 months. And then I kind of got back to where I lived and we bought a house and I was kind of getting settled there. And now I've run out of money and I need a job. Well, that's not good. That shows that, you working in a law firm is not your priority. And why would someone hire someone that's been unemployed for 2 years whose priority is not working in a law firm? If you want to work in a law firm, by the way, you need to find a job while you're still employed or pretty freaking fast thereafter. Because if you don't find a job, it shows a bunch of things. It shows that, that you don't know how to represent yourself because frankly, if you look in New York City, there's maybe 10,000 law firms. If you look in all over the state of New York, there's maybe 100,000. So you should anybody should be very easily be able to get a job. I talk about that in webinars. If you want to ask questions, we'll talk about it. But you can't have long periods of unemployment. You shouldn't even be employed. You shouldn't even be unemployed when you're looking for a job because that shows, hey, maybe that person just didn't like working in our law firm. And instead of following instructions and keeping their job while they got another job, they just resigned. Or the firm pushed them out more likely because they didn't do good work. There's a whole series of people, multiple resumes I see every day. So if there's 100 resumes, there will be at least 10. And if I talk to these people that are unemployed, they will say things like, oh, I didn't like, the management, like the hours. I didn't like that they expected me to come in the office 4 days a week. I didn't like the commute. I didn't like this. I didn't like that. I didn't like this. Or more sometimes the law firm let me go. The work slowed down. So the work slows down and there's 5 associates in your class. Well, they're not going to push everyone out. They're going to push people out that don't do the best work or they consider problems. So that's what unemployment says. If your resume looks like you don't need the job, I see women a lot sometimes that have taken time off to work with their kids and they put down a beautiful neighborhood, like this super high income neighborhood. And then they list, this $5 million house as their address. And then they list that they're a member of a country club or whatever it is. That person doesn't need the job. Why would a law firm hire them? Again, think about this. Why would you hire a nanny that comes in and tells you that her husband is the CEO of a private equity firm, and obviously that person doesn't need a job. Law firms want people that are going to stick to it, that need the job, that need the work, that want the work, and not like they don't need the job. Think about what you would do. Would you hire someone who's independently wealthy to work as a nanny? You want someone that's going to work hard, that needs the job. How else do a lot of law firms determine that someone needs a job? They love it when you say, I just got married and my wife is at home or my husband is at home. I have 3 kids that, that I need to support. I bought a house and I have a mortgage and I need to pay my mortgage. Law firms love it when people buy houses. Law firms love it when people get married because that shows that they need the job. So you convey those things to a law firm while you're working there, you're more likely to keep your job. They know you have a monthly nut to cover. And if you lose your job, you're going to lose your house. So, putting an apartment number on your resume doesn't look like you need the job. If you're working at a firm for $300,000 a year, they want you to have stability. They want you to stay there. They don't like that. So if you look like you don't need the job for whatever reason, or maybe this is another one. People list that they've started this company for whatever reason while they were employed or, while they took time off, and this company is thriving, but it doesn't have enough work right now because something happened in the economy. Well, that person may not need the job as much as someone that's had stability. So that doesn't work. Some people may think they're better than the employer. So, they will list in a firm not comprised of people from good firms. They will list at the top of their resume their school email address, which means, hey, I went to Stanford. Look at this. I've got this email now. That doesn't look good. Listing a bunch of stuff with the Stanford Alumni Club doesn't look good. I mean, I'm sorry, but sometimes people list the members of a country club. It doesn't help you. If you look like you're better than some guy that went to Loyola Law School in Los Angeles and you're applying for jobs of a bunch of people that went to Southwestern Law School and, I don't know, like not Whittier, but, just not top ranked law schools. And you think it's cool to have that email address and list all these alumni clubs. You have to de-emphasize that with certain employers. You don't want people to think you went to that school and like you're better than them. And if you go into interviews and you talk about how you went to Stanford and how all these different things, like they're going to think you think you're better than them, will get a job with other people at Stanford. Like you don't talk about that. Like, no, you fricking de-emphasize anything that makes it look like you think you're better than the employer. Because if you do that, people are going to think you think you're better than them. And they're going to expel you like a frickin' virus, as I talked about earlier. You need to look committed to your practice area and working in a law firm. If you switch practice areas, people are going to be like, wait a minute, like if this person wouldn't do that work for an employer, maybe they won't like the new work we're giving them and they'll want to do different types of work for an employer. So they don't like that. I mean, you don't talk about that on your resume. To the extent you can. You don't talk about how you went in-house. If somebody goes in-house and loses their job or decides they want to go back to a law firm, the law firm would have to be insane to hire them. And this is what law firms do. So you get people all the time that are in Northern California and went to schools like Stanford and Berkeley and decide that they're going to go in-house with a client or something when they get an in-house job. No, absolutely not. Those people, by the way, might apply to 100 firms in Silicon Valley and no one interviews them. They're like, why would no one interview me? I was an associate for 5 years at Wilson Sonsini, and before that I was at, Simpson Thacher in Palo Alto, like these great firms, and no one's hiring me. What did I do wrong? We went in-house. You decided that a law firm wasn't for you, and you decided that you wanted to work in another practice setting that was less demanding, where you could work for one client, not many. Like, what the hell? You think people are going to interview you? So it's very hard. Now, I can get in-house people jobs, but I sure as hell have a very hard time of getting them jobs in major competitive markets like Silicon Valley or New York or Los Angeles. No one's going to hire them. Why would you? You'd hire someone who's in a law firm and has shown a commitment to that law firm and that practice area. You want to use unusual fonts, put your picture on your resume, make the resume a certain background color, all of them black. You want to use certain fonts and things on your resume. Well, that's not what attorneys do on their resume. You want to be different. People don't like that. People want you to look like everyone else's resume. So don't do that. Sometimes you'll have language that makes it, appear like, you don't take your work seriously, like, did what was required of me, or, worked on discovery or something, whatever, like things that appear you don't take your work seriously. Like if you're an attorney in a law firm and all you did was discovery as a litigator, you just say litigation attorney. You don't talk about the fact that you did some kind of low level work and that was it. No one's going to hire you. So you have to look like you can be managed. I'll probably talk about this a little bit, more in the presentation, but you definitely need to look like you can be managed. You also need to look like you'll do the job long term and stick around. What does that mean? People hire people that are likely to stick around. Why don't they like people that look like they move around and get sick of one law firm and go to another and things? Because when someone leaves a job or is fired, what happens? Everyone else is like, why is this person leaving? Are they leaving for more money? So maybe we should look for a job paying more money too. So the morale of the current employees are there, if you're leaving, isn't good. If you decide you want to send an email to all personnel after you leave talking about why you're leaving, or you had a great time there, it's a really great place, and you're going to a better firm, well, that's not something that helps the morale of current employers. If people leave, or current employees are brought down by your bad attitude, then, when you leave, then they don't know if you left with a bad attitude. When you leave, you're going to affect the morale of current employees. So that costs money. People want people that are stable, because if they're stable, it looks like they're freaking falling in line, and they take, they take their job seriously. My first two hires, by the way, at BCG, very interesting. One had looked at her previous job, worked at a previous, these are people I hired right at the beginning of my recruiting agency. One had worked at a previous job for 8 years as an attorney. Another had worked at 16 years at a previous job as a legal recruiting coordinator. And then after them, I hired a series of people. I decided that people that were let go from large law firms or weren't working there for whatever reason were now working on their own, or not employed, were good hires because they had experience going to big law schools and working in big firms. And that was really important. Well, I probably hired over the next 18 years, probably 25 plus recruiters that had been fired or had worked at their last job a very short length of time. They all left. And most of them, when they left, were disillusioned with the company, were decided that another recruiting firm was better, decided they needed to start their own recruiting firm. And then a lot of times they tried to poach my employees. That's what people do a lot of times when they go to another employer. They poach your employees. And the one that was there 8 years decided that it was time for her to retire because her husband was wealthy and she needed a new job. And her husband was only her husband for 6 months. The other one retired too. Like they retired. They stuck it out. They didn't get psyched out by people leaving. They just continued to do their work and they were manageable. And then, if they, leave, what happens is someone will kind of do quiet quitting. So all of a sudden, when they're looking for a job, their hours may be lower. They're not fully engaged. They're not doing their hardest work, and that costs the employer money. So I see people all the time. They have one job for 1 year, the next job for 1 year, the next job for 1 year. What happens to a lot of those people is they just get disillusioned with a particular firm, decide they need to leave. Or often the case, they get there, maybe they leave after 9 months, and the employer rapidly figures out that they're not good at their job or whatever, and starts pushing them out or gives them bad reviews. When an employee leaves a law firm, the client's inconvenience. It costs the law firm and the client money to get someone else up to speed. They need to sit down and spend a lot of time understanding the type of corporate transactional work that client needs, or the type of litigation that the person needs, and they need to get up to speed. It takes time. It costs clients tens of thousands, if not more money. It costs the firm more money that may have to write off their time, work that doesn't get done when someone leaves. So if you're at a law firm and you're billing $500 an hour, you're billing 2,000 hours a year, and you've been doing that consistently. Well, someone else is either going to need to pick up those hours to get the work done, which is going to inconvenience associates and is going to make them more likely to leave, and because they're getting too much work, or the work's just not going to get done. So the law firm is suddenly losing 40,000 a week without you doing the work. So why would you want to hire someone that's bouncing around between firms and is pretty clear that that law firm is losing work, losing money? It doesn't matter if you do personal injury attorney, they're missing someone to file, to go into depositions and everything. Why would you want to have to recruit someone new? Because recruiting someone new can take some time. They may get resumes in the first month and start interviewing those people. It may take a month to get enough good resumes. Then they will interview people. That costs the attorneys time. It costs human resources time. The attorneys have to actually show up for interviews. That costs them hundreds of dollars, if not more, per hour, maybe $1,500 in a big law firm. They need to interview all these people. The associates need to spend time interviewing these people and not billing hours. They need to make offers to people. Some of those attorneys won't accept offers. They need to interview sometimes a lot of people for that job. So they're spending a lot of money. I mean, it can cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars when a law firm is losing people. So that's going to cost them money. If you look like you're not going to put your head down and work, like those good recruiters I hired that were confronted with 25 plus people or 50 plus people leaving because they got disillusioned, and you don't look like people go into organizations and they put their head down and they stay through ups and downs. It's like marriage, like, for rich or for poor, for health or sickness. Like, people that get married, you find someone that's gotten married every 2 years for the past decade, you're going to be like, hell no. Like, this person is going to marry me and find fault or be a problem, or maybe they're psycho, and I'm not going to be interested in them because they're going to be difficult. So, and depending on how you leave, like, law firms are pretty aware that people that are leaving may threaten the law firm and get some sort of severance agreement, like 6 months or something, because the law firm would rather pay that than get sued. Or they may find something the client that they were doing wrong on behalf of the client, maybe billing too many hours. They go back to the client. They risk the client being told that. Who knows? But when someone leaves, the firm is also going to be worried about you getting sued. They may have to document all the things you did wrong, and that's going to take time. So no, they don't like that. People are hired by law firms that look like they're going to commit and not leave. And if it looks like to the firm that you may not stick around and hop between jobs, are unlikely to hire you. I have people sometimes that will move firms and they'll move to one place for like 1 month. I'm not going to tell them the unethical thing to do, but is that really a job? So if they list that, that's not going to help them. So they need to do that. So you have to look like someone that's going to start work and remain there through ups and downs, and do the same thing for future employers. You need to, be the kind of person that is able to commit to employers and stay there. And the more stability you have at a law firm, the better off, the more likely you are to get hired. So if you're always looking for the next best thing, law firms aren't going to like that. You have to be stable in your geographic area. So, if you're from a certain geographic area and have always lived there, well, say you're in, I don't know, in Chicago, and you decide that you want to move to California and you don't have any contacts there, well, law firms are unlikely to hire you because they want to hire people that are already in California, that have taken the bar and whatever, and they're already there. And why would they hire someone not in their geographic area? Unless they have so much work that they can't find people there. But if they don't, then they're not going to hire you. I get attorneys in Canada all the time that are trying to relocate to New York. They're taking the New York bar. That's not stable in the geographic area. If the person's not from New York, why are they likely to stay? It's a risk. Why are people, what about people that are relocating to be home to a market? That's actually good because it looks like you're going to be stable. Like if you're from Spokane, Washington, and you're currently practicing in Miami, that looks like you're going to come home and you're going to buy a house, you're going to be around family, you're going to be stable. But if you don't have any connections, that's a big risk. Why would they interview you? They wouldn't. I remember when I was applying for jobs from clerkship in Michigan, I applied to one, I had great qualifications. And I remember I applied to one firm in Fresno. The hiring partner from that firm called me up and said, hey, do you have any contacts there? And I was like, well, my fiance is looking at, works doing landscape architect there. but she was also looking in Los Angeles and other places. And the guy was like, well, we hire people that aren't from Fresno when they leave. So this isn't a good risk for us. You wanted to hire people from Fresno. You have to be stable in your practice area. Bouncing around because you have an itch in your practice area, you want to do something else, they're unlikely to hire you. If you're continually getting more responsibility in your different roles, sometimes that's good. It will show that you're probably going to stick around because you want to go to a firm that works for bigger clients. And this firm, the next firm makes it look like you'll stay. So there's certain things you can do. So what does that mean? It means you start out at a small firm, representing smaller clients, you move to a bigger firm, doing bigger clients in your practice area. And then suddenly you find a firm that is just the best in your practice area and you really want to work there. And the law firm will think, hey, this is what the person's been looking for. They're likely to stick around. So you can do that. If you are, like I said, improving the quality of the firm you're at, that's good too. Like it shows you're moving up, you're motivated, you want to do a good job in your practice area. But if your firm just looks like a stepping stone, because there's nothing special about that firm that makes them like the obvious choice for people wanting to work in your practice area location, or one of the top obvious choices, say you're a mid-sized firm and you're getting all this type of experience in corporate law or whatever it is, they're going to be interested in hiring you because you look like you have, you want to move to a bigger firm, and people that try to move to bigger firms are more likely to stay. What does that mean? So that means you went to some local law school. You started off doing corporate transactional work at a small firm, then you moved to a mid-sized firm, and now your dream has always been to double your salary and work on bigger clients in an AmLaw 100 law firm. Why does the AmLaw 100 law firm like that? They look like that because you're not some person that's just kind of randomly moving around between big firms. You're someone that looks like this person that went to Southwestern Law School in Los Angeles is going to have a really hard time getting another job like this because they went to Southwestern, and they're likely to work harder than all of our jaded lateral associates coming from other big law firms that have been there 1 or 2 years or whatever, and probably are going to leave again to another big law firm. What's so special about us? We're just another big law firm. But if you look like you're highly motivated and want to go to a better firm, and you have a history of doing that, then that's actually, if you are going to a place that looks like your last stepping stone, then they will hire you. They like that. They like people that didn't go to top law schools that started out to small firms and moved to bigger ones. They like that. So you have to do something like that. Stability in your practice setting means you're likely to stick around if you're always working in a law firm. If you go in-house and back or whatever, law firms are going to presume that you're going to leave if the same opportunity presents itself. Outside interests and activities. So, sometimes people that are committed to a religion show some type of stability. Mormons do great. They have missions on their resume and things like that. Law firms like that. You can be a Mormon and be a Democrat or Republican. They don't care. But if you look at that commits stability. I go to church every week. If you like to play a sport, you've been playing a sport since college, or you've been playing some club sport for 10 years, or, you have, been married for 20 years. They like that. Those are stability. People that stay married for 20 years get into a marriage and they make it work. People that don't will find someone that's more attractive, someone that's richer, whatever, or their spouse has some psychiatric issues and that they're resolvable. They will fix it. They will stick around. They'll commit. So law firms, this is the word, they avoid dabblers, people on the way down, people who leave when the going gets tough, people who aren't committed to a law firm and are dabbling in it, people that are dabbling in different things. Law firms need stability. They need you to be profitable. They need you to maintain good client relationships. And they need to control their internal environments, meaning hiring people that are employed. If you were hiring a nanny, and the nanny had 3 jobs in the past 3 years, and you had another one that had their last job for 10 years, you would like that. You would think, wow, this person must do good work. Wow, they must make it work wherever they go. Wow, they're no longer a nanny because the last child turned 18, whatever, or turned 12 or whatever. That's what they like. Your resume needs to look like you want the job. So that's another thing. So if someone wants to do something and it's important to them, like the attorney moving up from Southwestern to a large firm or whatever, they're going to try harder. They're going to be more enthusiastic. I can't believe that I got a job in an AmLaw 100 law firm and I was in the bottom, in the lower half of my class, and I'm going to just fricking work my ass off here. They like that. They respect, they want people that are going to try hard, that take things seriously, that are making a good effort, that look like they've written papers, like they've done all these things or given presentations and things, that they're enthusiastic about their practice area. And again, someone that's enthusiastic is likely to stick around. So that means, they like that. People that stick around also are going to improve in response to criticism. So they want the job. They're constantly improving. They're getting more and more responsibility. They want even more. They're going to go to another firm. Certain people are grateful for opportunities. They think that someone giving them an opportunity is like really good, and they are appreciative, and they treat the employer with respect because they may not be a 1 AmLaw 100 law firm and just think they can go to another because they went to a good law school. They're grateful for the opportunity. They think, thank you. Like someone that you hire, again, as a nanny, that's grateful for their job and is like, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. After 1 year, they might just say, I love working here. I really appreciate the opportunity you gave me. You're going to think, wow, I feel good about myself because this person appreciates what they have. They go into an interview and they say, I would be really grateful for this opportunity. One of the people I most regret not hiring in my career, I was interviewing people to be a CFO, like being a financial officer in my organization. I saw one guy that I thought was really cool because he'd been a CFO in a law firm and had, looked good on paper, but I hired him pretty soon. He was telling me what to do, not at all grateful for the opportunity. He was bringing his dog to the office, showing up late. And I had another guy that was older, he was probably in his 60s or early 70s, and he came in, and I was kind of suspicious about his age and things. And then I didn't like something where he talked about he was a venture capital investor. But, I was like, why would you want to work here if you're a venture capital investor? And he said, well, I want a full-time job. I don't like, just investing. And but then he said something. He came, to my desk after he was interviewing behind a desk, and he stood up at the end of the interview, and I stood up, and he said, I just really want you to know that I would be incredibly grateful for this opportunity if you hired me. And he was the only person I interviewed like that. And I didn't hire him because he was older, but he was sincere. And that was a huge mistake because I hired someone that didn't care about their job. They sued me, and they were very enthusiastic about suing. They hired the best attorney and one of the best attorneys in Los Angeles that would rake me over the coals. So if someone's and literally when I was finding an attorney to represent me, the attorneys I was looking to represent me were like, I can't do this. Like, this is going to be a nightmare because this guy, is a credible person, credible employment attorney. He's got his own building downtown Los Angeles. And I've been there, and it's like, it's filled with antiques and nice art, and it's beautiful. It's brand new. And he's like, there's no way this guy's not going to have the wherewithal to continue suing you. If your resume looks like the job where it's a good fit for your experience, if you're a family law attorney and you're a general practice firm that's only doing family law, the firm's going to think you're a good fit based on your experience. So you better have that on your resume. But like I talked about earlier, if you're applying to a firm that doesn't have any family law attorneys, you say you're applying to be a general litigator, that's not going to help you that much because you're not going to look like you're a good fit for that experience. You're not likely to stick around. Again, practice area, being committed to that, being committed to the employer, being like the law firm improving is good. Being from the same practice setting is good, makes it look like you want the job. If you are in government or in-house or an accounting firm, it looks like you probably like other jobs, like other types of jobs. That's good. I talked a little bit about the location earlier, but I want to tell you some people that get burned. People that are LLMs and come over to the United States, don't have a JD, get an LLM degree. Those people will often leave when something comes up in their family, or they just want to work back home. They miss working in St. Petersburg, Russia, or Amsterdam, wherever, and they want to go back. And that's what happens. So why would a law firm hire an LLM person from a foreign country when someone has a family in upstate New York or whatever, and they're going to work there. They grew up there. So again, to get hired, you need to be from the same practice setting. You don't want to look more committed to outside interests, which I talked about already. A bunch of information about pro bono, public interest, entrepreneurial, all those things. Don't make it committed like you look like a good fit for that. And this is the last one. I apologize for going into so much detail about this, but I think it's really freaking important. Law firms need to, this is the last one, believe it, to like you. So they hire people that like them. So they will not hire someone that they don't like. I tell all of my candidates, and this is something you should do too, print up the resumes or the law firm bios and the LinkedIn profiles, the people that are interviewing you, and take a look at their picture and think, this person reminds me of my great uncle that I was so nice to me, or this person reminds me of my friend's dad that was so nice to me. And think about the reasons you like that person, because if you think it, you will show it when you go into interviews. They want to hire people they like. Think about the reasons you like this person. You like them because of their experience. Whatever you like about them, you need to concentrate and think it. My dad was in the Central Intelligence Agency. One of his first jobs, he was spying on someone and was their friend, not their friend, but a business, an acquaintance in some organization he was part of. And he was spying on this person, and he went into interview with his handler, and it was kind of funny how they did it. Like, he would go into a doctor's office, and this doctor was secretly, I don't know, but he would go into a doctor's office and he would walk into an examination room. The person was there, his handler, and he started talking about how this guy was a loser and all these different things. And his boss just was very firm with him. He's like, if you want to work here, you can't show it, because if you think it, you'll show it. So if you think someone's a jerk, you think you don't respect the person, you don't respect partners in law firms, you don't respect other partners in law firms, you will show it. If you think it, like your mannerisms, your facial expressions, the way you walk in and smile or not is going to show it. So you have to look like you're likable often on your resume, but you have to look like you're likable when you go into a law firm. Law firms hire friends. They hire people that are part of the same social and business circles or whatever. They hire people that they feel like they can be friends with, that will often allow them to open up and vent about their personal issues and be understanding, that will, and that happens, or that will like them and they'll walk around and, with them if they're going to court and carry their briefcases and make you feel important. You like people that make you feel important. Don't you like people that make you feel important? I had the best time this weekend. I have my assistant as a personal assistant for me. And I showed up at his wedding. His father came up to me and told me how much he appreciated the job. And then I was sitting at a table with some of his relatives, and they said, I don't think you realize how important this is to our family, and my assistant's name that you were here. It just means so much to me. And when I was alone at tables, people were coming up and talking to me and said, "Oh, you shouldn't be sitting here alone." They put me in wedding pictures and with the groom and the bride and things. And I was like, wow, these people really like me. I had literally the best time at any wedding. As a matter of fact, I had a better time than I had in a long period of time, maybe even a year, because everyone liked me, and that made me feel very good. I got home and I was so excited. I was listening to music on Pandora and feeling really good and getting into the music. And, I called one of my friends and I talked to him for a long time. So people want to hire people they like. People like people they like. Do you like friends that don't like you or talk behind your back? Who do you like? Do you like a potential mate that really likes you? So you're on some kind of date, and it's clear that that person doesn't like you. Do you like that person? Or do you choose a mate that likes you? One of the examples my mother likes to give that she thinks is really interesting, she said that she took me to pick out a puppy when I was 10 years old. And this one puppy that happened to be the run of the litter, not the largest, the last born, the one that was, didn't get enough nutrition from their mother or whatever, ran up to me and was licking me and enthusiastic, jumped on my lap. And these other dogs, were just kind of, they're important to the mother, were just kind of wandering around, kind of ambivalent to me being there. I chose that dog. That's the one I chose because she said that you chose the dog that liked you. Well, this is the same thing that employers do. They will hire people that are similar to their political views. They will hire people that have thoughts, certain political issues or social issues that they like. And I'm saying in general, you need to keep this off your resume, but if you get into an interview, maybe you apply to firms that are all Republican or all Democrat. If you do that, that's smart. But if you don't, that's dumb. You take that off your resume. So people like people that, do other things. I know some law firms in Silicon Valley where all the partners do cocaine, most of them. The associates sit down and do cocaine with them. They go out and drink a lot, do cocaine. Well, that's who they are, and that's who they hire. They pick up that you're kind of that person. They want people to do cocaine with them. I'm sorry, there's firms like this. There's firms where everyone's an alcoholic. There's firms where everyone's a teetotaler. They hire people that are like them. They hire people. There's some firms where everyone's went to church on Sunday. I was with a branch office of a New York law firm in Los Angeles, and I was there, and all these partners were laterals. There were probably like 15 of them. Well, as far as I knew, they were all Catholic. Who would know? But they were all Catholic. They had been partners at other firms and been friends because they were all Catholic. And they went over to this other firm, and another firm came over, and those people were all Catholic too. Who would have known in 40 plus attorney office that all the partners were Catholic? And a lot of the associates were too. They hired people that were Catholic. I don't know how they all found that out. There's firms where everyone's Mormon. There's firms, where people are very committed to being a Democrat, Republican, former college athletes. There's a lot of firms like that. People hire people that are like them. They hire people from the same neighborhoods that they live in. They hire people from the same neighborhoods they grew up in. I had a candidate that it was during the height of there was a 2001 meltdown of corporate work. All the firms in the country were letting corporate people go because they'd had all this work that was generated out of an economic happening in Silicon Valley and internet companies all over the country, that suddenly all these internet companies ran out of money and there was no more work for these corporate attorneys. So all the law firms in the country pretty much were letting people go. No work. There was one firm in Denver, Morrison and Foerster, that had an opening. I can't imagine how many resumes they received. And they received a resume from someone that was extremely committed to doing whatever it's called, not with skis, whatever that type of skiing, my mind's blanking. And that was the person they hired. The partner loved it that was in charge of hiring. That person liked snowboarding. And so that's what happened. So again, just random hire from someone that was committed to that. People want to feel understood. They want to feel like they identify with people based on certain interests. They want to feel that they respect their background, think it's great that they all live in the same neighborhood or all went to the same law school or all went to the same college. They like that. People want to be around others with tribal affiliations. People want to interview people that are fun and like the job, that have respect for it. And they want to be careful about not offending people. I go around people all the time. I can sense they're hardcore Democrats and hardcore Republicans. And so, I don't agree with all the policies. I'm kind of ambivalent politically. I don't agree with all the policies of Democrats. I don't agree with the policies of all the Republicans. But if I meet those people, I will talk about what I identify with their political interests. So they like me. If I meet people that went to my law school, I will talk about professors we had and things. So they like me. If I met, talking to people that went to my college, I will talk about things the same. And that's why all these firms schools go all over the country and have alumni meetings, because people like being at alumni mixers. They enjoy being at college mixers. They want to be around people like that. They make friends with people like that. When I moved to Los Angeles, my two best friends were people that went to the prep school I did, Cranbrook Kingswood, outside of Detroit. Those people and I shared a common bond and decided we were going to be friends because we grew up around all these people. So people that see the world in the way people do are like them. They can be friends outside of work. The wives can be friends, all the sorts of stuff. And so they like that. And, the more you can identify whatever your politics, religion, or social interests are with targeted firms, not every firm, but targeted firms that do that, the more you're going to be likable. And so, you have to ask yourself if you're going to be served by your political party, religion, race, sexuality, organizational interests, handicaps. Some people have different handicaps, is also, can be attractive. I mean, it's rare, but organizational interest, all this sort of stuff. So if you look at the resumes of the attorneys at the firm before submitting your application, which most attorneys don't do, they just say, hey, there's a job on Indeed or Law Crossing or LinkedIn or whatever it is, and they apply to that job. Well, if they emphasize the wrong things, they're unlikely to get hired. If they show all this stuff, they're likely to get hired. If I'm submitting candidates to Salt Lake City, Utah, and they're a Mormon, that's going to have a much better chance of getting them a job than anything else on their resume, because people that are Mormon go to church. Most of them give 10% of their income to the church and support it. Most of them, their kids go on missions. Their wives are Mormon. They go to church every week. They participate in all the activities of the Mormon church. So those people get hired. Why would the law firm hire anyone else but that person? Think about it. Like, if this person completely identifies with Mormonism, they're more likely to get hired. Some firms, there's a bunch of gay people in them. Perfectly fine. When I came to Los Angeles, one of the firms I interviewed with, which is no longer in existence, had a branch office. It was a San Francisco firm, Heller Ehrman. I walked into these interviews and I couldn't believe it. All the associates were wearing tight T-shirts. They had cigarettes on their desk. They were obviously gay. And not only did they have cigarettes on their desk, they had these brands like American Spirit and all these kind of unusual brands, not like Marlboro Lights. And that was what the attorneys there were like. And so then I got a call, like, a couple days after interviewing there, from the recruiting coordinator. She's still a recruiting coordinator in Los Angeles. And she said to me, you would come here and not be happy with the people here. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But that was how the kind of people that they hired, people that were gay. There were even a certain type of gay. I mean, one of them was wearing leather pants. I mean, it was, that's what they were. That's okay. Personal struggles. Sometimes you'll go into an interview and, you'll discover that, other people there may have had different personal struggles, disease, or, Alcoholics Anonymous members or recover. You can discover that in an interview sometimes the way people talk. Sometimes people will put that they got a 175 on their LSATs. Everyone at the firm, for whatever reason, got really high scores in their LSATs. They will like that, or 1580 in their SATs, group affiliations, your legal education. So diversity is valued in law firms, but there are limits. You have to find organizations where the people match. But if you do, you're gonna, be matching them. If you are looking for a legal job in CNN, which is pretty much all Democratic viewpoint, and you have a bunch of stuff talking about Federalist Society, Republican politics, and the NRA, you're not going to get very far. The same goes for most U.S. universities that are very liberal. You want to get and some people would even call them communists in terms of the ideology of the professors. You want to get a job there, you're going to need to look like that's you. There are very few universities in the country that are composed of Republicans. Just that's how it is. Very, very few. As a matter of fact, so few that there are only a handful that have Republicans in them. They just push them out like a virus. And so you cannot often get a job in a law firm, in an academic setting, if you're in one political affiliation, to the fact that it's excluding entirely most people of other political persuasions. People that are getting law firms that are getting money from USAID and so forth are likely to have, Democratic not law firms, but, universities and law school. So, your resume should emphasize experience that the employer would like, or if you don't have that, then take it off, and because it's just not going to get you an interview. So just remember, employers want to see demonstrated commitment on your resume. That means often keywords that are related to that, and experiences. So your keywords should all be related to antitrust litigation, as many as you can find to naturally put in your resume. All this sort of stuff, race, sexuality, and other personal details that would make you less likely to a certain legal employer needs to be on there, and the more likely you are to get the job. So this stuff, extremely important. I hope that you got a lot out of it. This could dramatically change your employment trajectory, whether it's changing your resume, applying to people like you, and then taking the stuff off that's not likable, making sure you like employers, trying to demonstrate at least upward mobility on your resume if you don't have any employment stability, but trying to emphasize employment stability. And, just in a commitment to a practice setting, realize that if you don't have the commitment to your practice setting on your resume, that's a problem. Realize that if you don't get a job with a certain type of, employer that you like, or don't manage to get a job before you are unemployed, that's going to hurt you. Just think about it. Like someone that, even if, law firms, by the way, respect women that went to take care of their children for a certain number of years, but they also may not respect it if you need to work limited hours, or you need to, you don't have a burning desire to get back and take care of your family or whatever. So you need to think about all these things. So I will take a quick break. I hope that this presentation was important to you. I hope that you take notes. I hope you ask questions about how to frame your resume if it doesn't do these things, because this particular presentation can change your life. It will. If you understand what I'm saying, it will determine the course of your life and your career, the stability you can provide to your family, how much money you make, how much, how well you're going to do in firms you go to, all of these things. Like, why wouldn't you change your life so you can make more money? And by the way, everything I've talked about is primarily applicable to law firms. It could be applicable to in-house jobs if you're nothing but in-house, or government jobs if you're nothing but government. But for law firms, I will just make a quick pitch. All I do are law firm placements. Why do I like law firm placements? I like law firm placements because when I'm doing that, I feel like I can provide something valuable to your career. If you go in-house, you're likely to stay there for no more than a couple of years, or you may get a job long-term, but very rarely. Companies merge, they go out of business. And when that happens, they will bring in one legal department or another, or keep people, or, let people go. And there's a merger, because they want to reduce expenses, or a new legal department, will be created by a general counsel that wants to surround themselves with people they like and people that are like them. So you go in-house and you go to different practice settings, you need to really reflect what employers want. And then if you do all that stuff, you're going to be much better served. But the reason I like law firms is if you start working in a law firm at the age of 25, you can practice until you're 90 plus. I had my first divorce. Fortunately, I've had two, was an attorney that was in my neighborhood. His office was down the street, and he was 90 years old and still practicing family law. So think about it. So if he graduated the year at the age of 25 from law school, he was still practicing in a law firm at the age of 90. And I see attorneys all the time get jobs in their 80s, people I represent. So think about that. You go in-house, you got a couple-year job. You stick in a law firm, you've got a 65-year job if you're 25. You can continually get clients. You can continually improve. You can build your own business inside a law firm. You can do all these things if you are committed to a law firm. You have a lifelong career. Whereas you go in-house, you'll lose your job. Think how hard it is to get a job when you're in a law firm in-house. Now imagine that you're not coming directly from a law firm. In-house people like generally to hire people coming directly from law firms because their skills are fresh. They're more likely to do work than manage it, which happens to in-house attorneys. In-house attorneys figure out that, hey, they can assign all this work the company's giving them to outside counsel, and they become experts in that, not doing the work that they were hired for to save the employer money. So, take your chances, man, and going in-house. Take your chances of going to the government and getting a cushy job where you are not expected to have a lot of accountability. Remember what happened with Elon Musk? He required all of the government employees to send a one-line description of what they worked on the previous week. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to be manageable. They didn't want to have to account for their time. They're getting fired all over the country. They're remote. They're not in Washington, D.C. for Washington jobs. They're in Colorado so they can hike and all these things. He told them to come back to the office. He's looking for people that are manageable. That's what a billionaire is doing. That's what everyone does. Trump is surrounding himself with hardcore Republicans. He wants people that have shared interest. He wants people that are going to carry out his orders, unlike they did in his first administration, where everyone found fault with him and resigned and said bad things about him and wrote books about him. He wants people that like him, that, he'd learned that lesson in his first administration. So this is how the world works, man. This is how all these things are how the world works. It works in political parties. It works in law firms. It works all over the place. People need to like you, think that you're going to be manageable and follow instructions, unlike people did for Trump when he hired all these cabinet members his first term. He wants people to follow instructions. Recently, he's been fighting the head of the Federal Reserve because he's not doing what he wants and lowering interest rates. he's going online and making these comments about him that he's dumb, that he's this and he's that, because he doesn't like the fact that this person, the Federal Reserve Chairman, was appointed during his first administration, and people were like cats. And if people are like cats and just doing whatever they want, not hurtable and manageable like a dog, they're not going to hire you. So I hope that this has been helpful. I think this is an unbelievably important thing. Group affiliation, being likable, being manageable, looking like you can do the job. These are the most basic requirements of working in a law firm. Why would you do anything else? You'd have to be insane. And almost 85% of attorneys are insane. So I apologize for raising my voice here, but I really want you to understand that 85% of candidates out there are doing the wrong thing. And you may be doing the wrong thing. And if you're doing the wrong thing, that's why you're suffering. That's why you're unemployed. That's why you're not getting jobs that pay more. That's why you don't have any stability in your legal career. All these things you're doing are just completely messing up your life. It doesn't matter what law school you went to. You can make yourself a better candidate. You can go to an unaccredited law school and get jobs in mid-sized firms that people from top law schools can't, because they don't look like they're committed to a practice area and manageable. So all this stuff, man, like, you just need to make sure that you do everything you can to look like you can do the job. You only put things on your resume relevant to the job. You de-emphasize things not relevant to the job. You need to do things that make you look manageable. You need to do things that make you likable. You need to do things, all these things you need to do. And if you don't do them, you're messed up, man. You're not going to get jobs. And again, I want to make sure I come back to this fact, because almost everyone on this call, at least 85%, probably, maybe a little bit less because you're trying to learn like you are here, like probably actually maybe significantly less, but 85% of attorneys and even law students are putting things on their resume that's not getting them jobs. So I will talk about this in more detail when I take questions in a few minutes. I'll take a quick break for just like a minute, and then a minute or two. And then when I come back, I will answer as many questions as you have. So I will stick around, and I'm committed to this job. That's why I'm probably like the only person out here giving webinars and writing articles and things. I'm committed. I expect you to like me because of that. Maybe you don't, because I'm giving hard advice, but I'm doing all these things that I need to do in my job to do it well. I'm committed. I'm, take advice and all these things. And you probably take advice too and are manageable because of that. So that's really good. And, and if you're on this webinar, you're learning, you're taking feedback, you're doing all these things that you should be doing to succeed. And just this one webinar alone, and many of them are like this, most of them, but this one webinar can completely change your life. All you do is listen to this, you're going to have a better life, better career, probably better for your family. You're going to make more money. You're going to have a long-term career, not a short-term one. You're not going to be unemployed. You're going to do all these things that are necessary to do well. So again, I'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, I will take as many questions as everyone has. And please, I would encourage you to ask any question you have that you think you don't understand, or anything relevant to your career that doesn't involve this. I'll do it. So thanks. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I will start with questions. And by the way, questions are probably the most important component of these presentations. Why is that? Because, you can watch a webinar, but to some extent, it's like going to the bathroom without wiping yourself or something, because you can learn from the issues that other people are having, and learning about other people's issues can be incredibly educational, because maybe you have a certain thing that's, important to you that, that applies to a lot of other people. So I encourage people to ask questions, and you don't have to be afraid of asking questions. Sometimes people are worried about confidentiality and that sort of thing. But if you ask questions and you're logged into Zoom, I'm not going to show your name. I'll cut and paste the questions. Honestly, no one's going to know who you are. I mean, if you think you have one issue, I would be willing to guess that 50,000 attorneys have the same issue. So I don't even care what geographic location you're in. I mean, other attorneys in geographic location could have the same issue. Okay, so we'll go to questions. Okay, I'll just go first question. Okay, to offer a contrary position as a senior house and house counsel and former law firm partner, I understand the value of attorneys who understand more than their niche practice area. For example, AGC is a national bank. If I have a CRE loan that's going to default, I want to hire a lawyer who knows A, CRA law, B, creditors' rights, C, loan workouts, and D, bankruptcy litigation. This ensures that I don't have four different lawyers billing the same matter. I also work with high net worth family offices, and I think a well-rounded lawyer is much better value for HW and private client services. No FO client wants a lawyer to do corporate acquisition questions, can answer corporate questions, and the hedge fund doesn't want to hedge and wait for an answer to questions about CRE related matters until she speaks with a colleague. Yeah, so there are certain practice areas where everything is related. That's perfectly relevant, when you're hiring outside counsel. So, this practice area, is all related. I mean, the CRE loan is related to CRE law, creditors' rights, loan workout, and bankruptcy litigation. Those practice areas are related. So yes, you may want to hire one lawyer to do all those. That's applies to related practice areas. Another point I'll make, and this is important, all this depends on geographic markets as well. So what does that mean? So geographic markets will often determine the focus that the attorney needs, and I'll talk about that. So this is something that I left out of my presentation because for the most part, it's not always relevant. But what does a geographic market mean? So New York City, where the billing rates are high, are high, extremely high often, extremely high in corporate facing law firms and and law firms that do work for companies, because people go to New York to have focused, very focused, extremely focused, that does one type of corporate law, like a niche, right? A niche. When you get into middle market areas, which would be which Omaha is actually a very big city, by the way. It's kind of huge, no one thinks about it. But middle market areas might be Omaha, San Antonio, Texas, places like that. Local clients have relationships with law firms that cannot do enough focused work because there's not enough, cannot do enough focused work because the clients don't have enough focused work. So what does that mean? So I was reading the biography of Michael Dell. So Michael Dell was very proud to say when he was doing his YPO or whatever, he went to New York and used Wachtell. He didn't use any of the firms in Austin or Fort Worth or Dallas, for example. He used major law firms in New York to do that because, they do nothing but focused work. He was very impressed with that. But most middle market firms don't have enough focused work. So you might have a corporate attorney that's a generalist and does a bunch of different things, attorney that's a generalist, but certainly, if clients have major work there, they're going to go to a major market. So, but, corporate attorneys that are generalists, are, Madison, Wisconsin, and places like that, because that's the type of clients there are there. People don't want to go to New York and pay huge billable rates for that type of work. So, corporate attorneys will be generalists in middle markets, and then, solos will often do a bunch of different things. So, I remember when I was in law school, I wrote a book about personal injuries with attorneys, like a 400-page book, and I went around and interviewed personal injury attorneys all over the country. And I'll never forget, I interviewed someone in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I interviewed a guy there, and he did personal injury, corporate, trust and estates, all those different things for local clients, and that's what he did. And, so this is what happens, trust and estates, clients and different things, and clients and different things. So, that's how it works. And, solos, solos and, small markets and often large, so small markets and markets often of both sizes. So that's kind of how that works. But, for the most part, people are going to search people that are, related. So corporate attorneys is related to all sorts of corporate transactional law. So that's one example. But most law firms are going to want someone that's focused in most markets. But yeah, if you're in a smaller market, then you can certainly be a generalist, and to some extent law firms will be impressed by you. But it means what it means is corporate, they'll still hire people that are doing one thing. It's corporate, not real estate or litigation, right? Vice versa, or litigation means, you have to be focused in your practice area. So what you're describing above is focus in a certain practice area. So that's what that is. I mean, it's all related. So, these attorneys in large law firms law firms that do that may do all those things. So, that's kind of how that works. But if you had an incredibly important bankruptcy matter where there was, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars at issue, you wouldn't hire someone with experience in, CRE law. You would hire someone that did bankruptcy litigation. So that's how law firms work. If we did work for a couple months, presidential campaign, should we exclude the job from resume? Yes, if the law firm does not appear all that presidential candidate. So, can you find that out? Usually by seeing a bunch of, jobs or jobs activities related to the practice area and resume. So if you see that, then the law firm either doesn't care, or they have, because they have people like there, or they could be all that presidential candidate, Republican Party or Democrat. So yes, but in the most cases, even if you go into a law firm that's half Democrat, half Republican, what do you think is going to happen with the Democrats interviewing a Republican? They're going to like them more. They're going to want to exclude people from their firm. They probably don't like it, but there's a bunch of Republicans. So they will hire and review resume based on, and give positive feedback on interviews based on someone that's a member, that, likes them. This person says, I agree that personal details should be left out of resumes. Absolutely. So unless it's, let's see here. What's the most profitable practice area for starting your own law firm? The most profitable practice areas for starting your own law firm are personal injury and trust and estate. Well, in most types of plaintiffs work, they can be incredibly lucrative. I know numerous attorneys that do that and have jets, and they're people that just literally started their own practices out of law school. So most types of plaintiffs work on trust and estates, very easy to get clients. You can go into a nursing home and say you're offering a free steak dinner to people, and they'll show up from the nursing home. They have nothing better to do. And you will get a lot of people showing up at the free steak dinner that don't have a will or a trust, and they will use your services. Easy. I mean, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. There's also associations for plaintiffs' attorneys where they can network with other plaintiffs' attorneys, and they can learn about how other plaintiffs' attorneys are getting business. It's the same thing with trust and estates attorneys. There's associations that can do that. Other ones like tax resolution or tax resolution. If you listen to the radio, you can you'll hear lots of tax resolution firms advertising. Why are they advertising? Even if 3% or 1% of the people listening to the radio have tax problems, they're doing that because that 1% is so profitable that they can make money from. Same thing with personal injury. Why do you think they're advertising on buses, billboards? I mean, do they think that they're going to get a good, return from advertising to 200,000 people and maybe getting, 10 signups or 10 people calling them? That's what they think. So personal injury, there's all sorts of other ones like do this right now. I shouldn't tell you to do it, but mesothelioma is a type of lung cancer or lung cancer that is always fatal. And because it's always fatal within a short period of time, what happens is in Los Angeles, if you file a mesothelioma case, you will get a trial within 6 months or less. Doesn't matter how clogged the dockets or judges, because within a short period of time. And there's always causation. So somewhere along the line, someone painted houses that had asbestos in them. Someone was in a building that had asbestos in them. Someone used a product like insulation or something that had asbestos in them. So if you can get that type of case. So here, how does everyone on this webinar charge someone thousands of dollars right now? If you can believe it, the cost of a keyword, the cost of a keyword on Google is I think it's like $500+. So just you clicking on a sponsored ad on Google will cost, clicks on Google will cost someone, just all you have to do, I'll show you this right now. It's just absolutely amazing. All you need to do, well, I'm not going to do it in a second, but all you need to do is do a search for this term, mesothelioma attorney on Google, and someone is going to put up an advertisement that's going to cost them $500 if you click on it, they may get, $50,000 of people until they submit their claim. That's how profitable it is, because they're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars off one client usually, and sometimes millions. So that's how valuable. That's why people do that. Um, and this person says it's nice to appreciate employers, bureaucrats a bit less. Yep. So bureaucrats are government employees, most in-house counsel, most public interest attorneys. And what does that mean? What that means is, what does that mean? So that means that those attorneys typically are unaccountable for their time, better at, good at avoiding work, lower hours than typical law firm attorney, lower hours, entitlements. So, entitled meaning you cannot get fired for too much, except for in-house. And then what else does it mean? So I just want everyone to understand like why bureaucrats aren't hired. They're unaccountable, they're good at avoiding work, including in-house. So in-house will learn in-house attorneys, almost all learn that they can refer work out to law firms and not have to do it. So how do they do that? They do that based on, I knew a guy that hired a franchise attorney for his gym that was expanding all over the country with franchises. And so he hired a franchise attorney from his law firm. The franchise attorney got there and they did work for a couple months, but then they came and they were like, oh, this work is too sophisticated, has too much liability. You really need to, refer it out to this partner I worked with or whatever. And so he said that every time he's hired, when he hired this franchise attorney, it actually ended up costing him more because he had to pay her salary as well as pay the law firm's rate. So that's what happens a lot of times to in-house counsel. One reason they lose jobs because they do that, but one reason, in-house companies prefer to hire people from law firms because they're less likely to have become bureaucrats. So, entitled, cannot fire, all these different things. And that's why people from the the Biden administration and, or even the Trump administration working for bureaucratic organizations or USA, they're not going to get jobs at law firms. What law firm would hire a bureaucrat? So, that's what happens, when people get hired. Let's see here. So this person says, I tried all of them. They won't hire you. Most employers, not necessarily law firms, are selfish and take more than they get back. No, that's not true. Law firms teach you a practice area that you can use for the rest of your career. So you spend, 3 years at a law firm, 5, and you learn a practice area. You can practice that practice area. If you work in a law firm, start at the age of 25, you do it for 3 years. You can practice with your own firm or with another firm if you're good at it and like it for the rest of your career. So they're not selfish. I mean, if you're a doctor, you would have to go be a resident for several years and work for very low pay. Law firms will pay you to get trained. You don't get trained in law school. So no, they're not selfish. You can be yourself selfish because you're using them to teach you something that you can only learn in a law firm. You're not going to learn how to be a good patent attorney responsive to clients if all you've ever done is work in-house. You're not going to learn to be a corporate attorney responsive to clients. What does that mean? So clients are part of the market economy, part of the market economy. So this is very important that people understand this. So clients are part of the market economy. What does that mean? If someone's a part of the market economy, it means that if the law firm doesn't do good work, or trust them and bond with them, trust them that they're the best, or bond with them, or charge fair rates, with them, or charge fair rates for what the work they're doing, whatever the work is doing, then they're not going to hire them. So that you have to do good work in a law firm in a certain type of way, in a certain type of way to keep work in a law firm. You also have to do law firm partners are part of the market economy. So you have to do work, that's your client. also part of the market economy. So law firms are teaching you a practice area. They're also teaching you how to be efficient. They're also teaching you a practice area. They're also giving you the opportunity. You have the opportunity as well as ability to watch people, watch partners, to develop business. So you could develop business as an attorney, and you can pretty much have the rest of your career as being employable, and have work for those clients and get additional business. So let me tell you about myself. So I was working at this big law firm, New York law firm in Los Angeles, and they had ridiculously high billing rates for, probably 50, 60% more than even like Latham and Watkins and places like that in Los Angeles. So I got there and I got a client. There was a friend of mine I got to high school with. And all of a sudden, he was very well connected and started referring me other clients. And then I just got some clients on my own. I went to a party and there was a general counsel of this growing company. And I impressed him and asked him for work, and he gave me work. So to make a long story short, we're talking about the years 1998 to 2000. And I had something like $250,000 worth of portable business. I decided like I could make more than I was making in the law firm by taking those clients and holding on to them by charging lower billing rates. And so I literally went and considered recruiting. I had all this work in a law firm, but I actually, when I left, and I was able to sit down and think like, hey, I've got 40 hours worth of work in front of me for like the next 3 weeks. And so I had to decide, was I going to do that work or was I going to do recruiting? And when I had been leaving that firm, when I quit, the law firm said, this is important. They said, if you leave without a job, people will think you're fired. So you have to spend less, at least the next three months looking for a job so people don't think that. So I looked for a job and I started working with recruiters, and I thought they were idiots. They didn't know anything about the market or what I did. And they didn't have access to all the jobs, which were pretty easy to find because there was this huge shortage of attorneys. So there were jobs on employer websites and all these things, and those firms are hiring like crazy. So I thought that it was better to be a recruiter. But I left after working for a very short time, not very short, but 3 to 4 years in the legal profession. I left and had enough business to start my own law firm. That was after only 1 year of being at the law firm I was at. So you can develop business very early in your career by learning what's in a law firm and starting your own firm, which is easy. I did it with less than 3 years of experience in law firms. So you can start your own firm. You can do all these things that you won't be able to do if you don't, if you're not trained in a practice area. And then you can do that for 50 plus years. So why is a law firm bad? It's very good. You can work for a personal injury firm a few years and start your own practice. I was having dinner with a friend of mine who's a woman, and she graduated from not a highly ranked law school in Los Angeles, like a local law school. She worked as a summer intern in a law firm during her last year. She decided that she could figure out immigration law very quickly, and she could figure out immigration law very quickly without working in a law firm. She saw all the things that the attorney wasn't doing. This is in one summer. And she decided to start her own practice with what she learned as a summer law clerk unpaid. And she is now one of the most famous immigration attorneys in the country, like does extremely well, has a $3 million house, sends her kids to expensive private school. She's the only provider in her family, has, staff at her house, like, nannies and things, because she travels so much for her work overseas that she pays, I think, $80,000 a year. She has one nanny working there. It's also cleans her house, and husband does maintenance in her, $3 million, $5 million house. And she did all that just learning how to do a practice area in law school. Okay, let's see here. Let me see. So again, law firms are awesome. The training you can get, there's nothing like it. It can empower you for the rest of your life. Why is that? Okay, your PowerPoints are life-changing low key. Before your seminars, 19-hour no bar number. Okay. Post seminars, plenty of six-figure opportunities while still working on bar numbers. Now I'm trying to figure out how to be liked and not get booted out. Already happened once in the past year. Round two starting next week. Still no working bar number. Yeah, exactly. So that's allowing you to get jobs without having passed character and fittings or even passed the bar. So yeah, and that's training other legal recruiting companies. Like that's one of the problems with them. They don't learn. So people there aren't trying to learn, and the majority of them will start their own business if they can. But yeah, most people don't want to learn this stuff. They just don't care. They think they can do it without them. And that's a problem. Other people are very into training, but trying to, yeah, other people are, let me see, not into training, and so that's good that you were seminars. I'm sure it taught you a lot. How do you hire what you like? You do what people want. You make them feel respected, and if you make them feel respected, like a client, and you do the work that they want you to do, like you would do for a client, and you are working in the office like they want you to. Another big thing, this is someone, I don't know if everyone on the call says this. If you're working for a partner and he or she's working till 9 o'clock at night, you need to be doing the same thing. You need to leave after them. That's how it works. You need to get into work for them. That's how it works. And then not make typos and, give them the work that's well thought out. Do the same thing, all that sort of stuff. If you do the things that whoever you're working for wants, then they're going to like you. So let's see here. Okay, for attorneys with decades of experience, to recommend shortening their employer to the most recent 15 years of experience to avoid advice. Okay, so I actually know who you are because you put your name, so that's good. But yes, that's exactly what you do. And I apologize for not telling you about this in your resume, but you list, most recent employer typically, if it's been more than a few years, and then you list that at the top, few years, you list that at the top, and then after you list it at the top, maybe you have another few, one or more. I think your particular resume has some great employment stability at a top litigation firm in LA, but you probably, you have a lot of stability at that firm. So you definitely need to list that, a lot of stability there, for several years, which is you. So that's actually very good. But you have that, and then you have your current few employers, which is, you can't avoid that. But if there were, say that you had, I know a guy in Los Angeles, he's a corporate attorney, a raging alcoholic, meaning he'll go to lunch and have 3 vodka martinis and go back to the office. People very quickly find out about this, or he's not doing good work because he's an alcoholic, but he actually has business, but his business never materializes. He always pretends like he has more when he goes to a new firm. So he's probably had, 10 AmLaw 100 law firms, 100 law firms, and, over right now, over a 25-year career or something, or maybe, I don't know, maybe even 30, I don't know, 25-year career. But what he did in his resume is he just had, these different jobs, and maybe, even so he listed, I think, his most recent job. This is what he did first, recent job, and he might have gone like, I don't know what he does. He got like, May of 2022, or something like that, or 20, it probably is 2024, because this guy's such an alcoholic, he just bounces around. But, let's say May of 2023. And then he'll say, associate and partner. And then he says, was an associate and also a partner, at several top law firms, including, maybe Baker, and I'm just making this up, Baker and Hostetler, and Morrison and Forrester, and I don't know, and Forrester, and Warren Forrester, and Wilson Dunsky, something like that. So he doesn't list like all the firms, but he says, including. So he's not lying, and that looks good. He's not lying about where he's worked, and but he's also not, talking about them. So he's just basically saying he worked at all these top firms as an associate, and that's how he's doing things. So you have another question, about your equity department, and he will leave that job soon as well because he's a drop. But what your particular situation is, what does a 25-year plus attorney do? And so in your situation, I've actually put a firm in Sacramento that just recently hired someone just like you, and I know they have work. So you should look at your account or firm in Sacramento. To why did that person get hired that's exactly like you? They got hired because when you're applying to firms as a senior attorney, I know a friend of mine whose personal injury law firm I recommended to you, and then he just kind of blew off. He said he would interview you, but didn't. But what does the firm need? So the firm needs to have high level work. That this is what happens when everyone gets senior. You don't have business. Needs to have high level work at high billing rates. High billing rates. Where partners don't want to do the work. So what does that mean? Or do not have work to give them. And where clients would accept an associate or counsel or income partner, would accept, someone senior doing the work, someone senior doing the work without requiring a partner. So like, for example, what a partner. So for example, like, Quinn Emanuel, for example, is a firm that, could do that. But a firm like that, or even like Morse, Longer Tolls or something, has enough clients willing to pay for work that they don't care. The partners will have, this is important for everyone to understand what happens if you don't get work. So this is a very good question. Partners will have, clients that are demand, will have clients that, well, anyway, when partners, this is the most important. When partners do the work themselves, they may make 60% or even 70%, depending on the firm, but it could be, from 25 low end to 75% or even 85% of what they bill out. So, if a partner can do 2,500 hours of work or even 3,000, which is why a lot of them do it, then they're going to make a lot of money. But if they hire someone at their level to do the work, then that same work at their level, their experience level, the same work in a law firm, will bill out close to the partner often, close to the partner. So the partner doesn't want to give you work because the partner, if they give out the work, it could be anywhere from 10% or maybe even 5%, 5 to 25% of the revenue from the client. So why would the partner give out work? Like, why would they do that? Because they're losing money. So they all try to bill as many hours as they can. So why would they do that? And why would the client accept having someone, working on their matter and you're in commercial litigation? So why would the client accept someone that they don't trust and they do not trust and do not have a relationship with, plus have a relationship, have a relationship and respect their work because they're an expert in something, respect their work. Why would the client? So that's what you're up against. You're up against that. And, why would a client do that? But there's something else that you're up against too when you're a partner without business. Because the other thing you're up against is, people that are senior typically are jaded, by working in law firms. They're resentful that they're not a partner and resentful often reporting to, if you're 50 years old, I don't know how old you are, but I'm just saying hypothetically, 50 years old, you're not going to enjoy working for someone that's 32 years old. Enjoy that. And, 30-year-old. And this, by the way, this is extremely important for people to understand. This is what happens when you open your business. So you're not going to enjoy working for a 33-year-old partner. You're going to enjoy working for a 33-year-old partner giving you work, and you're going to resent them, and you're going to think they don't know what they're doing. And the partner is not going to like you either, because you're not going to, partner not going to like you either, because you think you know what you're doing, and and you think you're resentful. And also, you're not going to work as hard. So, not going to work as hard. So the sweet spot of that's what they mostly see. The sweet spot for a law firm is 3 to 5 years as a lateral attorney. So 3 to 5 years, and sometimes 6, and sometimes 6 or 7. But in general, and really 5 to 6. I'll tell you why. The 3 to 5, because someone at this level is going to try to be a partner. So they're going to work really hard. They're going to work 3,000 hours a year for the same salary pay and try to be partners. So they're more desirable. because they're giving it all, they're giving it their all. They've learned from their mistakes at previous firms, and they probably won't make them again, so they can develop a good brand at their new firm, and they learn from mistakes. So they come in and they're like doing everything they can to get the approval of partners. They're dedicated. They want this more than anything. They're willing to work hard. They know that there's advancement potential. So they're giving it everything they got. They're competent. They're competent for the most part. Then competent. And then not only that, but their billing rate's lower. So the billing rate is lower. And because the billing rate is lower, that's more attractive to clients. Clients prefer to give work. If the partner is giving out work, they look good to the client because they're having lower level people do it. So, look good to the client because they're having people with lower billing rates work that they're not having to write off their time. So if it's a 1 year attorney, they're going to have to write off a lot of their time. So they look good to the client because they do not have to do not have to give high billing, they're saving money, right? So they're saving money. The other thing is there's also a sense of entitlement of more senior level attorneys because they want to get work that they feel, is important. They want to work on the most important stuff because of their experience. So they don't want to do, if they're given lower level work, they don't want to do lower level work. They want to, argue in court, do trials, and they want to do trials, and they want to, they don't, do trials. They don't want to do discovery. They don't want to, they want to do, they want to have client relationships and, all these sorts of things. So, and the law firm maybe can't offer them that. And it doesn't want that. And it wants someone that's like working like crazy and doing everything they can to get ahead. And then the other thing is if the attorney hasn't been a partner, then there's something that they're not doing. Now, in your particular case, you were working at a very well-respected litigation firm, and so it's not unusual not to make partner there, and for people to stay on and not get fired there because of the work. But if the person has been a partner, something wrong, with their ability to generate. So I'll show you another thing that just kind of brings up the sense of entitlement issue. There was a partner, very powerful real estate partner when I was at this Dewey Valentine before it closed. But he had this enormous book of business. It was like, back then it was 30, so it'll probably be 50 now, but maybe 6, I don't know. But this $50 million book of business. And he didn't make this one person that had been at Dewey Valentine since it opened like 10 years previously. And he didn't make this person partner. He made all of these people that were 10 years and so forth, not 14 or 15 like this guy made partner. The guy that he made all his close associates partner because he had enough work to make them partner and give them that title and senior level work. So he made them all partner. And because there was this massive amount of work, and so he wanted to use his pull when he came over to Dewey Valentine from Paul Hastings, he wanted to use his pull to make those people partners. So the day after doing that, or a couple of days later, it happened like on a Thursday or something, then he came into the office on Friday, and this 14-year attorney, he was kind of screwing them, but probably trying to get him to leave. He gave him this assignment that could have been done by a first-year attorney. And the guy that got the assignment was pissed off he didn't make partner. And so he said to him, you know what, like, I don't have time for this game right now. I'm upset about, you advancing these other people. I don't even know if he said that. It's just like, I'm upset, and I'd like to, take some time off. And I know you're kind of messing with me giving this work. And so the partner was like, okay. He just left the guy's office. And then he came back with a human resources person, like, 30 minutes later. And he said, I've got in one hand, I've got, maybe like a $75,000 check for you. And in the other hand, I've also got a agreement here that you won't sue me or sue the firm. Or you can leave right now and take your chances. And so the guy was like, he's like, okay, I'll sign the agreement and take the money and leave. And so that guy was unemployed for probably 6 months. And that's kind of what happens when if you have a bad attitude about the work. And so law firms don't like that. Okay. Next question. And that's their experience with a lot of senior people. They can't give certain types of work. I manage a social, how do I manage the social aspect of the law firm if I'm an introvert? I have lots of haters in my daily life. I wouldn't call them bullies because they are not bullying anything, but their gossiping is annoying. Anyways, my social anxiety is very real. I was hoping to get into a new office and just being locked in a room and talking to buddy, just working, but that's not going to happen. Yeah. So you have, a couple different options. First of all, most lawyers that do transactional work, that do like do patent work, that do certain types of IP work are introverts, and that's good. Even attorneys that do briefs and things in law firms, and so you can advance based on your work quality, even if you're an introvert. But most introverts like talking to people about the work that they do. So you can certainly do that at social functions. People that if you're an introvert, they understand you're an introvert, and they usually will, not always, but they'll realize that and they won't necessarily hold that against you. But social things of the law firm can make a difference. But being an introvert is perfectly normal. There's tons of attorneys that are introverts, and those introverts also advance, and the introverts also get business. I remember when I was at Quinn Emanuel, it was called Quinn Emanuel, Urquhart and Oliver. They used to have a monthly meeting and they would talk about getting business and significant cases they were on. And I remember Bill Urquhart said to the associates one time, he's like, the biggest nerd in Los Angeles also has the most business, which I thought was very interesting. Biggest nerd in Los Angeles also has the most business. So, that just means that, that's actually not important, something that you don't need to worry about. Why did you leave the practice of law? I think I answered that. I left because I left because I actually didn't like the introvert. Did not like working silently in office, which I was doing silently in office alone, in office alone. I didn't like other partners were getting credit for my work. So I was bringing in clients and, and only partners were getting the origination credit, not me. So I would see these emails go out and be like, wow, this partner generated another client in the tech space this week. And this guy didn't really have any clients. And I was like, wow, that's my client. Partners taking credit for my clients. I'm just taking credit for my clients. I didn't like that. I didn't like that I felt like I could do the work on my own. And I didn't like, and legal placement occurred to me because no one was good at it. It's still somewhat the case, but, appealed to me because no one, most of the people when I started were failed lawyers, still the case, but were had other experience, like they might have been automotive sales things. So appealed to me because I didn't think other people knew what they were doing. And basically that was at the time, all the recruiters in Los Angeles were cold calling people about specific jobs. And then they would try to get them to submit their resume. And at the time, job boards like Monster and Jobs and things were coming into play. And so everybody was, more people were applying that way than these recruiters that have been doing it for often decades. Their only experience was cold calling in response to specific jobs. At that time, law firms with work were essentially hiring anyone that applied through a recruiter. So the market was candidate driven, still is, but before the market was driven by a single opening in one law firm. So I saw that. And then the research component appealed to me. And then also the idea of like interfacing with all these different people and helping them with things that they didn't know about helped me as well. So I like that. Okay, next question. And I think this is the last question if no one has any more questions. So we'll end after this question unless no one has any other questions. Any suggestions for a law student looking for employment after graduation? Trademark, privacy, and AI law, focus with related classes and internships. Are these areas of law, especially privacy and IP, more open to hiring right out of law schools since those areas are growing so quickly? No. So any law student should apply to any firm that has an opening or any firm pretty much in existence. So you can apply to small firms, large firms, and unless you're at a top law school and able to get jobs in major firms, that is not going to, you're going to need to do this. You need to apply to most law firms, regardless of whether or not have an applying to openings are insane because you're going to hire people that are doing it. Now, you can certainly apply to firms that, may have an open for a junior attorney or something, or 1-year attorney, but, trademark is one area of the law. Trademark is not a good area of the law to be into because most large law firms will hire staff attorneys because the work is pretty rote in nature. It's not that challenging to file a trademark. Trademark litigation could be, but it's very difficult, if not impossible, to advance to being a partner in trademark because the work is very low fees because they're usually people charge per trademark. It's hard to, if you want to make money, you have to be in practice areas where individual clients will pay unlimited fees. If they're sued, they'll fees. Or if you sue, like a personal injury attorney, there could be this huge upside. And, so trademark is very risky. And then privacy and AI, law focused with related classes and internships, that's again, like, if people want that, that's great, but you just apply to a firm and they'll put you where they want. They will, you have to do whatever work they want. And if you look like you're only going to do that, then you're just narrowing the field of places to apply to very, very few. Like, why would you only apply to firms that have those practice areas when those practice areas aren't even very large? Like, why would you do that? Now you could if you have existing experience in it, but why would you apply to places that are places that you're unlikely to get a job? Because law firms don't hire summer associates to do privacy and AI most of another practice area, and they're not going to hire new attorneys most of the time because most attorneys don't have that. Most law firms don't have that practice area, even if it's growing. But if something's growing, many times they're going to be more. The attorneys there are going to be more excited to do the work when it's growing than they're excited to hire law firms. Why are law firms more excited to have the work done by existing attorneys? Existing attorneys are all over it. But you can make a lot of money going in-house in privacy. I'm not aware of making money with AI, but you can make a lot of money going in-house. So I saw one time a first or second year attorney making maybe $100,000 a year it doesn't happen anymore, but he was making maybe $100,000 a year at a law firm, and he got hired by Amazon for a job like paying $280 doing privacy. So, and I don't even think he had any experience in privacy. So it can be a good practice area for going in-house, but it really isn't as much anymore. And it was really a good practice area when all these law firms were having privacy, or companies were having privacy breaches and things years ago, but it's already been fixed, most of it. So it's not like a booming practice area. There's not a lot of work left in it. So why would you go into a practice area like trademark where there's not a lot of potential? Why would you go into a practice area like privacy where there's not a lot of upward mobility? It's all going downhill fast. And why would you go into a practice area where you're doing, work? I mean, where you're trying to get a job competing with other attorneys. It just doesn't make any sense. And I'm sorry to tell you that. It's just what I know. People do stupid things like they go and they get an LLM in intellectual property law without any technical background. Intellectual property attorneys, for the most part, have scientific discipline backgrounds, like they might have majored in chemistry or electrical engineering in law school. That's what clients want. They want people with science backgrounds because they can understand intellectual property matters better. There's not really any reason for a law firm to hire someone that gets an LLM in intellectual property. It's like there's just all these things people understand that are completely ridiculous. Okay, so the next question is the most profitable practice areas for starting your own firm. I think I answered that, but I said the most. Actually, I did answer that question. Sorry. And then this person says most of the people I applied for the law firms didn't hire me because I had too many skills. Yeah, that's insane. Like, why would you list skills that have nothing to do with working in a law firm, or too many skills in a law firm that were unrelated to a focused practice area? People don't like people that have all these experience doing other things and aren't committed to working in a law firm. To see her. And someone said employment discrimination, but that I didn't answer. And I think I've answered all the questions. So thanks for everyone. I know this is a long webinar, but they're all important. And I hope everyone learned a lot and learned how to fix your resumes and then learned how you need to behave in law firms to get ahead. So thanks and have a good week. And next week I may do a resume review. So if I remember, I think I will. And or if I don't do it next week, I'll do it shortly. And we'll go over our resumes with your name stripped off, with your current employer stripped off, so people won't know who you are. And I will do that for you. So thanks. Appreciate it.